We are now live in all places, with sunshine in our faces, and a smile in our hearts, and a fucking snigger of laughter for every single stupid ass person. Hello, hi, welcome. Why does that look like that? Let's fix that. Okay, that's interesting. That looks like a glitch on Twitch. As to be expected. Anyways. Welcome. Today is the 8th of June. It is technically day 3 of Summer Games Fest 2025. I have only broadcast the first day live and will, at some point either today or tomorrow or throughout the next parts of the week, be premiering them after they have gone live for day 2 and day 3. Because I chose to take an executive decision while I'm working on side projects that I have yet to announce or to premiere for those that are involved in their recording, to sleep over at my woman's place the other night, which obviously meant by the time I got back, live events that were happening in the morning were not going to get covered as they were going live on broadcast. Way too many multiple things happening inside of my physical IRL schedule that just wasn't going to happen. Hence why these modifications have been done. And shit's hard enough. And so, we find ourselves here at this point in time. Technically, from 15 minutes ago, it would have been 2 hours and some odd minutes before the next live event were to start. From this point, if I were to film and record as I usually do, it means that we would be halfway through the middle of the second event before the Death Stranding 2 event that will be happening later tonight. So instead, what I will be doing when it comes to my recording and coverage is as follows. Since Day 2's content has been concluded from last night, that will be the content that I then broadcast again for the next live stream. Then, for today's content, I will be live broadcasting the Death Stranding 2 cast reveals and questions, which, going off of their fucking website, goes live at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard. So that means all of what's currently happening today on the 8th, which includes the currently premiering, or should be, Xbox Game Showcase, and the PC Gaming Show, I will show after the live stream that comes for Day 2, that direct Women-Led Games, Latin American Games Showcase, Southeast Games Showcase, Green Games Showcase, and the Frosty Games Fest Showcase. And then, for Day 4, because that's at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard, June 9th, I believe I could be able to do properly live for the Black Voices in Gaming, which is Day 4, and the final day of the event. Who's surprised that the niggas get the last day in the worst time slot when we're all at work? Truly, what did Summer Games Fest mean by this? Regardless, that is the way that they're going to be done. Therefore, if something happened in Day 2 or Day 3 of the game show, don't fucking ask me, I don't know. And I prefer you not spoil it for me, because it'll be even funnier when I see it from the broadcast. I've been trying to keep myself unspoiled, but mostly everybody is currently dunking on the dumbass who's in the thumbnail. So, if it happened in Day 2 or 3, don't ask me, I don't know. All things said, all things regarded. Hi, hello, welcome, hello, hi, hello, welcome, hi. So, let's rip the band-aid off and get started today. Hello, Saffronet. No, Saffronet, you are not the band-aid.
What? Okay. Hello, how have you been?
I just told you.
I'm not the best at doing these intros.
What?
I'm not the best at doing these intros or whatever. Ah,
Are you asking me to tell you again?
no, no, no. I'm good.
Okay.
Um, oh man, I don't really have much of a update to really talk about other than some like a couple of strange things I've seen via Twitter or people freaking out over some details being changed in Deltarune. I won't spoil for anybody who's played yet.
I know what you're talking about.
You know?
I know what you're talking about.
Okay.
I mean,
I-
unfortunately, people on TikTok are not showing any kind of decorum. They are spoiling it nonstop. I've seen pretty much
oh,
everything from Chapter 3 and 4 because I wouldn't have never had the time to play the game myself. So, it doesn't matter if I've been spoiled anyways. However, I have seen what people have been talking about. Non-stop, people not shut the fuck up about it. However, we can talk about that.
okay. Well, I'm not at that. Well, I know it's a route specific detail, and I usually play on a more pacifist kind of thing. But like I felt that in my opinion, Toby wanted to do something more riskier with the darker roots in the story, right? But unfortunately, considering how people are, they can't handle this kind of thing, and calling they're calling him all sorts of names. But from what I understand, even prior to this, some of the fan base was starting to turn on Toby because he likes Arrowgay.
Mm-hmm. Continue.
No, I'll let you say your piece.
Okay. I was setting up my piece. So, for this, there have been Undertale Deltarune hotfix patches that are being released over, I believe it started basically on the day of launch, so 3 days now, that have been coming from the Undertale / Deltarune account. They are being listed as hotfixes to solve and change problems, as well as updates with a frequent concept being alerted at the same time. We are releasing hotfix to remedy some of the issues occurring in the game on PC and Mac. You can confirm the version number on the bottom right of the file select screen. Then, through various versions, some in Chapter 3, some in Chapter 4, change list problems for common crashes, freezes, visible debug messages, that crashes that involve picking up grass and swapping characters frame perfect, erroneously enter an empty room that then soft locks the player, backtracking into a puzzle that attains a specific armor that is specific to a route and to obtaining a certain object no longer crashes the game, and then adding a failsafe if somehow you do not have an audio output during the rhythm game segments that exist inside of that chapter segment, as well as fixing issues with pressing up on keyboards for moving out of a present, regardless of the key bindings, as well as the thing that Saturnet just described being a small graphical alteration to a specific scene. There is no way to discuss this without spoiling all of you here. If you do not want to hear what's going to be happening during this conversation, I suggest you deafen or mute or leave the stream for about 15 to 45 minutes. This is your warning. By choosing to stay here past the warning, you are consenting to being spoiled. I don't want to hear none of that bullshit. Okay. So, Here's the problem. Here's the context. Pause timer.
So me and my friend were
Oh my god, people talking over the scene. Say nothing. I'm out. Okay. So there are various scenes here. Basically, at a point inside the chapters, the scene in question happens during Snowgrave. There are various inputs that happen here. The scene in question is here. Well, see, the joke there, Jenny Colo, is that my woman would never do that because my woman would be the one with the switch. Even then. What happens is this. You have a conversation with Noelle. You're talking to her. You're on a couch. She describes things that are happening throughout the Snowgrave route. Then, during the scene, there becomes a moment where the energy gets charged and changes. And actively, the involvement of whatever the soul is in the lore of the story actively tries to get involved in the situation to then create the precedent of the scene in question that the internet has been mauling their little fucking eyes out because I can't believe my favorite Oshi, I can't believe my favorite creator, I can't believe my favorite writer, for everything that we've ever done for you by supporting your video games, chose to use a scene that chooses to use symbolism.
Yeah, it's like no one's allowed to take risks because
Saf, the scene's playing out. I'll put it on screen for you so you can follow along with what I'm doing.
okay. And that was too scary.
It's not done. So, the sanity question, as it's expressed, here's what dumbasses thought. They thought that this scene involving Noelle, and this scene that plays off of the Snowgrave route, was Noelle being assaulted, raped, brutalized, and or anything that could be interpreted as something other than what actually happened, which is just literally the loss of innocence. That's why there have been multiple accounts that have been speaking like this. It sucks that he can't do any more symbolism like that because half of his fan base is this, with people with accounts such as Sapphic Himbo saying, "What the actual fuck is wrong with you? I hope you rot in prison for the rest of your life." Wow, this did numbers. If you put a finger on your ass and blow really hard, it will come out the other end. Okay, gotta mute it now because all the psych ward fugitives thought I was on their side, and they're now calling me an anti. Bye! Why would they say that, Carl? Let's go through some of the reactions. UT Venom in the Big 25. The Deltarune community will threaten and hunt the next 10 generations of your family. You don't completely understand the lore of the game with your first playthrough. Undertale and Deltarune are fucking butt cheeks, man. I'm tired of pretending that they aren't. You people cultivated this fandom, by the way. I remember the early days when everybody used to praise Undertale. It was just a good indie game. But these mentally unwell kids decided to colonize it. Me, who hasn't played any extra chapters recently. People are trying to say Toby, king of Eurogames fucks, implied it by accident. Small little silly kids. Sigh. It's literally at the point where you're not going to be able to put anything bad or evil in a game as a choice. People are so incredibly sensitive to any idea of an uncomfortable topic and immediately demand any bit of it to be removed from the media the second that they're made uncomfortable. It's good that Toby removed it to explicitly say that a sex assault metaphor wasn't the intended meaning, but I wonder why some people are so upset at others interpreting it as one way anyways. This is disingenuous framing of the fanbase's perspective as well as Toby's. It's like this when you have such a Tumblr fanbase. Generally, fuck the weirdos who thought that's what the rose actually meant. Getting filtered by a Toby Fox game is hilarious to the highest degree. Coffee shop AUs and their consequences have rotted the generation of writers' media literacy. Why are so many people against interpretation of art? This tweet is funny to me because this person is not a pro shipper, so antis also hate antis. Thug. He should have left it in. The reason is valid, but if we're going to start changing shit because, ooh, I interpret it means something bad, so it must something bad, then he has to go back and change a lot of shit that is inside of Undertale. Man, I'm just saying that symbolism can be so easily interpreted the way that, you blame people? This is one of the most popular kinds of symbolism for that. Can people stop pretending that the ones who see it that way are just so weird for it? Now, here's what happens in the route should you not take those decisions. Starting off with saying please don't. If you say proceed, but then you do not return your cursor to Chris. If you say nothing. If you say it was just a joke. And then what happens if you talk to Susie. for the sake of our convenience, I'm going to fast forward some of these other ones. Now, it is important to note that the important thing that you need to know about the context of this is that there is a sound effect that plays during the Snowgrave route. It is the same sound effect that played during the scene that you heard here before the scene where they are kicking the bucket inside the bathroom. This is basically confirmation of whether or not you are continuing on to what would be considered the Snowgrave route. Because I'm pretty sure, in terms of the lore of the story, every single thing that happens to be important happens around the December family. And the roaring has to do with something with the holidays, and more than likely is going to have something to do with Christmas. That's just my interpretation, and I'm pretty sure that may or less be the case. Every single time during each of these scenes where something doesn't happen, you hear this sound effect. Basically meaning, you're not on the Snowgrave route anymore. Because of the implication of the Rose animation, it made it seem as such that what was being implied from the scene, because what immediately follows after that sound effect, is this shot, that clearly what had to have happened was that the player, in the form of the heart animation, forced Chris, the character, to do something they didn't want to do. Which is obvious. The player is the person who controls the Red Soul, whereas Chris is the person who is the vessel of the Red Soul. And Chris, unlike Frisk, does have enough willpower that they can choose to stop you from doing things, or at least attempt to rip you out. In that moment, the player is effectively the one doing something to Noelle. Noelle is being forced by the player, who basically chooses to force their will onto Chris in this moment to make this scene happen. Therefore, the way that players chose to read this scene, especially with the heart animation, with the Rose animation, appearing and disappearing as such, is that this must have been rape. That's what they're coming away from.
I would say this says more about them than it does by everybody else. I interpreted this as like kind of a loss of innocence because of Noelle being forced to wear the throne ring and being coming to terms that what happened in the Snowgrave route wasn't a dream.
Mm-hmm. Now, as far as I'm concerned, especially considering this is stuff that can only be discussed if you're looking at the route, I doubt the majority of these players that went down this route had no idea that this was going to happen. Truthfully, this is the consequences of people like Letty Doolittle, or whatever that person's account name is. The one that would be all over TikTok telling people about fear and hunger and Funger too. This is the true consequences of all of the alternate universes where nothing bad happens and it's just a coffee shop AU where everybody gets to talk to everybody and there's funny, dumbass jokes and memes. Because this is the second most highest spoilered part of the game, where the most obvious one, I'm not even going to spoil, so that you can be able to enjoy it when you get there. It's not anything horrible, people. It's not anything horrible. However, as a joke towards that, we all knew that Toriel was a one, Mom.
All I can say is, like, This is the Lightning Queen meme.
So, this is the consequence. This is how they've chosen to respond, and based of people talking about it. Especially with the fact that the truth of the matter is that this is the opinion. Multiple people trying desperately to understand that actually, don't you know that deflowering does mean a loss of virginity? Why are you acting like that's not what it is? That's what happened.
We were trying to gaslight people into saying something else.
Restart timer. So, that being said, I could care infinitely less about the scene. I care infinitely more about the fact that Toby is self-censoring himself because his audience is that fucking retarded.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, like I said before, people had a very adverse reaction to finding out he was into Arrowgay, and from what I understand, he had to use a pseudonym, an alternate pseudonym, because he wanted to work with Hosho Marine, one of the VTubers that's very perverted.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he did a musical collaboration with her.
Keep going.
But the thing is, like, considering what I know, and I remember when the game was still new, he told people to hey, if you want to make not safe for work content, tag it as something else so that other people won't see it. And
Yes.
I'm like, damn, I didn't know he was down like that.
This is something that's being done just as the standard when it comes to Tumblr. So, when, what was it? Welcome Home? When Welcome Home started getting a lot of people that were starting to get into it, they obviously brought the kind of audience that brings. And that author made the exact same request as well. And people chose to override their opinion. And just kept forcing it through anyways. Some people gave respect to their opinion and did what they asked. Most others said, why are you stopping us? Don't you want your game to be more popular? In that case, Welcome Home is an ARG. And the fan of Undertale and Deltarune see it more as a multimedia experience that can be comparative to an ARG. Which is pretty much how most of them feel, because most of them are coming from the audiences of Tumblr, which is where most of these things are being held. Or, there are people who are coming from the audiences of people such as Nexpo and Nightmind, who specialize in making ARG updates. And sometimes are the channels that premiere the updates because they are working with the authors to show them what it is that they want to show off in the work. So it's a one-stop shop hub for everything you want to learn about the goddamn game. From the mouth of the developer to the mouth of the YouTuber, so you can see the reveals in their channel. The fact that it's gotten this bad, or rather that it is this bad at all, that he needs to push a worldwide censorship for his own game, that should be non-stop news coverage. But this is the audience that he has. This is the audience that he has from his fandom. And all of them can't accept it for what it is, because of course this is the problem here. Ironically, this right here, this post, is the perfect case example of exactly how I feel. Deltarune fandom pisses me off so bad. You guys can't even take a simple literacy for once in your life, and have to make it this big other thing that wasn't even supposed to be revolved around. I'm still reading the tweet. That wasn't supposed to be revolved around. Dumbest fan reward goes straight to Undertale and Deltarune. No, go ahead.
For all the talk about media literacy, the people saying it really don't practice what they preach at all.
Because they don't know it. That should have been obvious the first 11 times that people who are media literacy understanders chose to then continue saying, don't you know that fascism is the point of Starship Troopers? because they themselves never fucking actually read the goddamn book. Because the creator of the movie never read the book, and therefore were actively doing free press by demonstrating that they didn't understand the purpose of what was being discussed. I know it's been shit, because Panda has either taken a sabbatical, or was off dealing with serious life pain problems, and now I'm the only other one that is supposed to be a retard fucking babysitter, whose job it is to entertain dumbasses on the internet who don't understand things. But this is the goal, because this doesn't have anything to do with media literacy. They are stupid, but that's not the main problem here. A game is getting changed because people in the audience can't shut the fuck up. Does anybody remember what Toby used to do inside of the notes of his game files? Does anybody know? If you don't, I'll bring it up for you.
I think he used to, like, put in, like, cryptic messages.
Yes!
I don't know all the details.
I do. I'll show you. When Toby made things for the game, and was specifically putting things in as a secret to the people who were snooping around inside of Undertale's code, trying to find out what the fun values would supply, and what would happen to them, he put in a message specifically to those people snooping around.
Hello, have some respect and don't spoil the game. It's impossible.
Gotta go slower.
Hello, have some respect and don't spoil the game. It's impossible to have mysteries nowadays.
Because of nosy people like you.
Please keep all of this between us. If you post it online,
No one will be impressed.
it will be your fault.
That was his very simple request. Two people that would be consuming his content. Please don't spoil it online. Please don't spoil it online. And now we've gotten to the point where he has to change his entire game. Because the people online spoiling it then create a fucking never-ending harassment campaign. And unless he is willing to bend in some way, they will actively destroy his works. That's the news story here. That's the important part of this detail. They don't listen. Before in the past, it could have just been as simple as, well, did you know about this very obscure fact? That you would learn on something like, did you know gaming? But we are in a post-JonTron and a post-MatPat theorizing universe. Since he's decided to go off, well, technically all of the men that have children on YouTube have gone off to go live the dad side quest, which I guess also includes me, except my side quest is my quest. Since they have gone off to live their side quest, and their employees don't hold the same level of regard and recognition and personability as they did, where before, if somebody had given them the message through the proxy of PewDiePie or JonTron or maybe Pro Jared, although I'm pretty sure Jared ain't got kids, but we all know this man fucks. Like he does. If it had been included and it was words directly from Toby himself, where he had to show himself in camera and say, please don't spoil the game. You guys that are going to be on Switch are going to get the version before the people that are currently on PC. And you're going to be getting it with an entirely new generation of people who will have never played Chapters 1, Chapters 2, and will, for the first time, be playing Chapter 3 and Chapter 4. Please don't spoil it online. Please, let them discover it the same way that you'll discover it. Don't go snooping through the files trying to break the game and find out the optimal route to go through everything. It's still meant for you to explore. The same way that Undertale was. Not only did they ignore that message, oh, it's just an Easter egg. It's not the author actively pleading with us, please don't destroy the work that's meant for everybody else to get, because then they won't feel like they want to play it. No! They have to be the first ones to do it. They have to be the ones that go on to Twitter, that go onto the timeline, or spoil it all over TikTok, which is the worst offender in general. And they have to put it there so that other people can see them doing it and finding it. Because sure, on one side of the issue, you can then say, well, Carl and Toby, if we don't spoil everything, then we don't make the fandom around the characters that we want. And for people that are falling in love with the characterizations of Mr. Tenna, sure. However, this is the other coin of that. Okay? So, for every single, and I'm gonna call it a phrase so that you don't know what the fuck it is until you go find it yourself. For every goat trousel fan clip and also animated clip that just shows you what's going on there and decided to do a parody spoof on top of it, for every single one of you, and for every single other person who's making the Motor Challenge edits of Mr. Tenna, this is the other side of the coin. Is it worth it? Was it worth the editor having to edit their work because you couldn't control yourself? I don't feel bad. Unfortunately, I know why he feels. Because it's the same thing I said about Kai Cenat and Streaming University. Although, Kai doesn't necessarily really care all that much. He didn't really understand until the end. And at the end of the day, he doesn't have to give much of a fuck. Because, unfortunately, for him, he did the same thing that Toby did. And while I can understand and feel bad for Toby, please remember where Toby came from. Toby came from the fucking Homestuck audience. He came from the true deep-cut community. Then he built outwards. He started enjoying other things and enjoying other works, and then went from just being a, I do this on the side, to I do this with my work. Surely, the consequences of being a creator. Lord knows I talk about it enough on here, on Yap-In. But this, I don't feel sorry for him. To quote Alabastard exactly, back up here. He courted this audience that doesn't understand the difference between fantasy and reality. Even if it's not happening IRL, and even if he tells them that's not what it was, their fucking media literacy brain, with the opinions that they got from other YouTubers, will not allow them to let it go. So now he has to choose, do I allow myself to be harassed and cancelled, and people say the death of the author, Hatsune Miku is the new editor and true owner of Undertale and Deltarune, or do I have to make a concession? It's dog shit, no matter how you fucking write it. Because me, I don't care. As somebody who originally didn't have a care about Homestuck, until Michelle showed it to me, I would not have cared or known. And then
I never.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I never personally was a fan of Homestuck. It never really appealed to me.
Well, the overarching narrative of what it is, and the amount of music that he specifically wrote for it, not including the one that came from the Halloween hack, the very famous version that we've all basically heard like 5 different versions of now, which also includes the goat trousel. It's part of who he is. I don't really care all that much, specifically about that franchise, but I respect how much my friends cared about it. And through them, I gained an appreciation for it. As I did with most things that I usually myself am not directly involved with, but I instead learn through other people. Ultimately, no matter how you slice it, this is still what he's left with as a legacy. The legacy of his work is not the material. It is the fact that people care more about what they think is important. This is who they are. They are this. And the ironic thing about it is that apparently there was a reply that was made by Toby Fox about this that may or may not have been deleted. But right here, this image, this Wojak, this is the representation of most of the people that exist inside of the audiences of people who call themselves close to, left wing of, or left of a progressive position or opinion. Now let's see if I can go find that Toby Fox reply that was sent to that account. Let's see. do know that there is a pinned comment that was left by Toby Fox that if you upload gameplay of his games, that your video is going to get flagged because of the in-game music, and that you should actively dispute the claims so that they can be resolved. And then he put out a message on the 5th that after you finish Chapter 4, you need to load up your save file one more time afterwards, because there might have been something that you've missed, as a hint. And there are people on his team that have been looking out for every softlock, trash, and other issue that is existing. Doesn't appear to be a post that they left directly. No, never mind. I misread this. This says, I ratioed Toby Fox. Amau, kek, lol. So what they meant to say was that they had ratioed this. Never mind. So, that right there is the legacy of the game. The legacy of the game is that its fan base is so toxic to the idea of creativity that Toby Fox has to censor his own product, while also having to look out for every other problem that comes with being a content creator that makes something for a platform that can be enjoyed internationally, worldwide. Because you have included an international audience, that means you have to include the American audience, which means you have to include the TikTok, pro-shipper, anti-never-ending argument audience, which means you're going to have retarded people in it no matter fucking what. Go figure. Shouldn't be the lesson that we walk away with, but that's the lesson that we have to walk away with. Anything else you want to do? Anything else you want to bring up?
It's unfortunate that it... I'm sorry. Oops.
I'm out. Anything else you want to be able to tell us about Saffronet?
I mean, so far, I haven't finished all of Chapter 3 yet. I had to replay Chapters 1 and 2 to kind of get caught up, because I haven't played the game since the update for Chapter 2, and that was like a few years ago. So I just did a refresher on everything, and I didn't really care too much about spoilers because I'm aware that Undertale is like multiple routes and whatever. So I just wanted to see what the other routes were like, and I saw people freaking out over that specifically. But for me, I was exposed to how 4chan reacted to it, and they were they were way more jovial about it, because they were talking about how it's like, Toby, your lesbian character is being mind broken. What does this mean?
I can say that the reason why is because they're not as close to it. This is just a piece of medium that they care about, where they are looking at all of the tropes that are being used to write the story, and they're having fun. Whereas everybody else is not allowed to have fun, because the no fun allowed police showed up. Anything else?
How much time do I have? Am I running low on time? Damn it. I mean, I did want to bring up, I see people bring up that Seven Deadly Sins anime, and people act as if it's like the series that killed their fucking family and their dog, and I'm like, I watched a few episodes of that, and I remember it being kind of tame.
I have no understanding of Seven Deadly Sins other than Escanor. That's one of the characters of that series that just have been memed into existence because people would not stop using him for TikTok edits.
Oh, well, people were saying the usual, Diddy blood type shit about it. It's like, I thought the show was good, but it has too many weird things in it, but I kept watching it anyway.
A shonen battle anime having shonen battle anime character tropes? I can't believe it. It's almost as annoying as One Piece is becoming.
They were saying everyone's like a pedo, that's why.
I know. Like, it's almost as annoying as it's becoming with people who've decided to jump onto One Piece now that we're at the Umu arc. Because they are trying to re-explain shit that we've already known, or try to get in that audience so they can say, I'm doing it for a new group of people who've never been involved. It's extremely Jello apocalypse of them. Either way. Thank you, Seth.
All right.
Okay, bye. I love you.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye. Welcome, Lemon Duck.
Okay. Hello.
Hello, Lemon Duck. How can I help you?
Like, you know what she was talking about earlier?
Yes. What about it?
I was wondering about it. Like, why do fandoms have to act like characterization is like the most important thing for like a fan project? I get official works, but like I don't get why like fan projects like have to follow completely entirely the like fully fan like made like structure.
Is that what you want to ask as your question?
Yes. Like, why do fandoms have to like act toxic over it?
Okay.
The only reason I have like asked this question because like a few like days or weeks ago when I don't know, it was like a while back. Like I was listening to like videos about FNAF in real time, and like they were just dogging on it, including on tweets and stuff.
Okay. The short answer is media literacy and its unknowable, unfathomable, ever-reaching consequences. The long answer. Ever since the first fan dub, the first comic fan dub, the first Tumblr created and then fan Tumblr dubbed fan dub, which really is to say ever since the Homestuck fandom, there has been an ongoing forever war between content creators and the people who consume their material, where the audience believes it is their job to decide that if the creator has gotten too incapable of writing for their material, that it is now the job of the audience to separate art from artist and steal the work from them. Kidnap the work. Don't worry, that big bad evil dad that made work and material specifically based on their childhood experience that then has become my new favorite obsession, they've become an icky bad evil Trump supporter. You're rescued, sweetie. We're just gonna put you in with the foster home for other narrative literature points that have been adopted by Hatsune Miku. And we're gonna treat you better than that creator, icky, disgusting, nasty bastard ever could have. And if you think that the men get it bad, the women get it worse. For open example, look to your left and look at Hogwarts and the entire wizarding world of Harry Potter. You have a fandom that believes because they do not like Joanne's rhetoric, or her politics, or her opinions about trans people, that therefore Harry Potter is a work that must be taken over for the good of all transgender individuals. It's a little bit more than just, you made this? No, I made this. It's a, we the audience members, we built you up, and you betrayed us. You betrayed me. And as a punishment, the worst thing that they can imagine that they do to you, and it tends to be the case of this because the amount of people who get taken out of their work, completely sued and or die, and people want to carry the work on because in their minds the work should die with the person who wrote it. But it actually doesn't, because they can instead take it to a place to either bring it to a whole conclusion, or if it truly goes on to become a forever story, is in the hands of a content steward who is responsible with pushing it in the direction that would have stayed within the tone of what they wanted. So, I'm going to use an example that's going to probably trigger like 5 people here listening. If Mira died, and we were in the alternate universe, where Berserk was now in the hands of... what's the worst public figure I can think of? Lena Dunham. And Lena Dunham chose to now make it from a story about how Guts suffers and about how he and Casca find themselves held to the victimization of the choices made by Griffith before and after using the Bailet to become Femto. Instead of it being about that, it was now about trans politics. The true fans of the work, who enjoyed the work for what it was originally written to be, would be in a constant state of war with the people who are now the new grifters that got in on the scene, presented themselves as fan of the work, that it's so much better now that it's been made better. Or, I'm not joking about this. This is something that would actually happen. This has happened multiple times. It's happened to me. It'll happen to your content too. That at the same time, they say the game is so much better now, the story is so much better now, the book is so much better now they wrote out that icky nonsense that they had before. There would be an internal group that would forever speak against them in the state of a holy war. Because now you would have a group of people that actively would say what all people have said, which is, I love the work, I hate the people who consume it, because they aren't enjoying my content correctly. This has been the case with Warhammer. This has been the case with Harry Potter. This has been the case with online MOBAs. This has been the case of Riot Games as a company, despite where they started their origins from. And the fact that in most cases of time, if you have a creator that did make something that was actually seen as good, but then people chose to divest themselves away from their work, not entirely, by completely throwing it away, so, like Emily Yukis, they would instead decide that the best thing that they can do is to punish the author by making the work more successful in the hands of the community or in the hands of a separate author that could be considered the new true mother and father of the work, while everybody else leaves the problematic figure in the past. If not just outright rewriting history so that they are written out entirely, and thus people can walk up to this and say, what is Blood yapping about? You're not even a part of this thing. So, the Reddit founders, there were 3 of them. One of them had questions questioning the government, and then either was murdered, assassinated, or died, under nebulous circumstances. The other 2 people, one of which is the one that went on to go marry Serena Williams, they are now considered the 2 joining creators of Reddit. Completely other-personed, removed from the scene. And all of it now, just a leftist fucking talking pit. Full of people with leftist opinions, pushing leftist views. Shuttering out other people whose opinions are not to be seen and heard. As was the case with blocking X posts. Because if they can't control it and make it a narrative pit that fills to the left, they're going to instead use Blue Sky for that matter. Every time this happens, there is a knowledgeable and knowing admission for the people who are in the I already knew that I was disconnecting. Don't worry about it. Anyways, in the perpetual energy of the material, they believe that it is their job and their goal to rewrite the work so that incoming groups can be removed from the nasty toxic element that they perceive themselves trying to save and control someone from. I'm being told there's no sound. I can see my mic moving on the setting. Am I still giving no sound to Wheezy? Clap, clap, clap. Pause the timer again. Sound, no sound. Sound, no sound.
Yeah? Hello?
Carl, can you hear us? Okay, so Carl cannot hear us. Oh, okay, so we can't hear you now. We can hear you on the stream.
Discord.
Can't hear you.
Discord. Wonderful.
Okay, there you go. Welcome back. I leave now.
I don't know why that was that. Anyways, I love disconnections. Isn't Xfinity/Xstring such a good service and product, everybody? Anyways. I forgot where I was. No, I remember where I was. Somehow, the stream could hear me, and then Discord couldn't hear me. Anyways. They believe that it is the job of those individuals to become responsible and control the media input and the media output that is being understood. So, because I haven't scrolled away from it yet, we can actually use this as the physical representation of this happening yet again on Twitter as the living example. No matter what fandom it is, no matter what work it is, even if the work in question comes from the creator, period. The example being used was Owl House in the past. Technically, anything that comes from that era of Disney can be used. Amphibia, Gravity Falls, the Owl House, Big City Greens, etc. Disney Plus or Disney XD, Star vs. the Forces of Evil, Wander Over Yonder. The entire goal is they have to control how people understand the work. And by controlling the people who understand the work, they're able to control the future of the work. Because it doesn't matter if a bunch of, as they usually frame it, old fogies are responsible for spreading the work. It is the young, youthful fans who are responsible for making the work actually popular. And so, never-endingly, you'll have multiple generations of fans decide that they're the ones who know what's best for the work, despite the author or the writer who decided to do this, because they cultivated the energy that this is what they do. Doesn't matter if they call you anti-shipper, doesn't matter if they call you pro-shipper. This is the fan dub, and this is the fan work era of creation. Those fans truthfully believe that without having had a thing to crowd themselves around, to become fans of, to then steal the energy of the work, to then say they're going to save it from the problematic creator, would not have the ability to do it in the first place if they didn't make it. However, the irony is lost upon them. Because even for those that started making that work as a way to get some type of energy and reaction. So, for Vivian Adreno, for Vivzy Pop ends up being the exact kind of person that demonstrates that. She made the work because she was tired of being one of those people that was being strung along by the ones that were working for industries such as Nickelodeon for Team Avatar, where, why can't you put the queerness on the screen? Fine, I'll put the queerness on the screen myself. But then the same thing happens to her. Joanne, in the case of her work as J.K. Rowling, now to Toby Fox, certain people that are inside the fandoms of things such as Homestuck, Tumblr as a whole, Tumblr-inspired ARG projects as a whole. They are like this because they are control freaks. Most of them. The most avarice of such being the ones that have the biggest view to be the biggest bullies. It all has to do with power. If not just simply to make money off a thing. Because a lot of the fans that are making popular content off of it, they themselves... So, I know that Sir Palo, in terms of Undertale / Deltarune, had a long-standing meme that, as of the ending of Chapter 4, can be considered canon. Quite frankly, nobody's ever seen Bones move like that before. And nobody thinks it... Well, actually, let me start that statement again. People would not have expected for that to happen with Sans. Despite the jokes that people have made before, all of those jokes, yes, including those ones, are now unironically canon. And in this frame of reference, that is what they think they're doing. They think, if we steal the work from the designer, and I write it better, or we steal it from the designer, and we write it better, this thing will blow up and go sky high and make rocket profits. We'll be able to have fun, and we won't have to deal with the consequences of the icky, nasty garbage that we're trying to get it away from. Usually, this all goes poorly. Like, really, really poorly. Hi, Horror. This shit usually goes really, really poorly. Because usually the people who choose to get involved in this way, they themselves are fucked up. We're going to disregard what Sejin just said because that would be a spoiler, and I said I'm not spoiling it here. So I'm just go ahead and do this real number real quick. So, to answer your question long ways, it usually is at the detriment and mercy of multiple people choosing to, for reasons that they will never describe as harassing the author so that they can get popularity from him. It is usually the audiences of those authors who themselves come from problematic backgrounds that enjoy a thing that would be questioned by people who are not regular fans of that thing. To say that if they are the ones that are able to tell the author off, that they can then get the author to do the thing that they want. Considering that the majority of the people who do this are from progressive audiences, and those progressive audiences push far enough left to the point of being regressive left, it is the regressive left opinion that they must be always on the forward motion of progress. So anything that gets stuck and ground under the millstone of progress was itself not progress, therefore it was for the good of all people, because now we can move towards progress. So, Ruby, for example, what they've done to Ruby in the absence of Monty Ohm, rest in peace Monty Ohm, is definitely not Ruby. They will say that it's Ruby, but it's not. It was the fucking fan work that was written by members of staff that then allowed it to be okayed through the fan base until they eventually ended up writing unironic information that now made that character the most based character in existence towards the people that would be the opposite of that fandom. And only through being saved by corporate nepotistic garbage are they able to spin it as anything other than that. Unless, of course, the eye of the internet falls on top of it, and then you go that way. Multiple franchises suffer this. The most recent ones are the Sad Dad games. Somehow, the past, the problematic past that makes the franchise even possible of being corrupted into a Sad Dad game, means that somehow, Kratos has to be completely shamed of his origins. Because, God, guys, isn't it so much better now that we've got Golden Snakeskin voicing this character, despite the fact that the character was already voiced by a black man? Oh my God, guys, isn't it so much better now? We've got Black Evils, and we got Black Giants, we've got famous voice actor number 5769 and Troy Baker voicing yet another character, working in the narrative. It's so much better now that we've made it this way. Forget the chuds! It's boring, it's meaningless, and it's usually done by people who have something to hide in their closets, or should have never learned the statement media literacy in the beginning whatsoever. At least, that's how I feel about it. There's only really one solution, and that's either you have to now work around this audience, or you have to completely gut them from the material in general. Because no matter what you do for them or to them, they perceive themselves of having a greater right to your work than you do. Because they unironically are fucking Count Geonor from Path of Exile 2. They will literally crash out on you and say, "You manipulative little whore, how dare you do this to me after all I've given you?" And you look at them and you say, "Bitch, you didn't write this! You're just a fan!" On some level, it would be unfair to say that to them. But they unironically think that they have more right and more credit to the material that you choose to create than you do. And they will destroy your thing, should they perceive themselves to have been victimized by you. Because it's a mass hysteria. It's a group manipulative mass hysteria, Duck. This is how we understand them. It is associative with the ideas and the opinions. Because by being authoritarians and tyrants in their own mind, if given control over something, they're going to explicitly use that control the same way they perceive it should be done. Because it's their ideas that are making the work popular. So if it's their energy and it's in their inspiration and it's their ideas that make the work possible, then we just need to get rid of the thing that's stopping us from doing the ideas. What's the thing that's stopping us from doing all the bullshit, nasty ideas that probably make the work garbage? The author. So let's get rid of them! Does that answer your question?
Yeah, but like I also have like another question. How can we fix it?
Well, unfortunately, you gotta wait for Sunday because you only had enough time for one question.
Damn it.
That's why I asked you. But anyways, glad I could answer your question. Sorry that the internet cut in and out on you, but we got there.
It's okay.
All right. Give me just 1 second. I need to go to the bathroom. I'll be right back. Talk amongst yourselves for the bit, or rather, Marcus, come be my corporate monkey for a second.
You got it, boss. All right. Anyways, how are we all doing today? Hold on, let me go get the YouTube chat up as well. We doing okay? I know that I sound probably a little different. I have a brand new mic. There we go. Okay. So, does anybody have any questions for me? Aside from hey, listen, that's racist. And then when the franchise died, they scare off like that. Well, okay. So, usually that does happen, EXO. Usually that does happen. I don't say that happens all the time, but I do want to say it does definitely happen. Because you'll have people who will stay after it. And those people are typically the ones that actually did genuinely care. The projects that I would say that you could say that like are for franchises or things like that would definitely be Star Wars a little bit. Because in the state of Star Wars as it is right now, it is still very popular, admittedly, but it has died a lot. Like it's lost weight. That diet didn't work. And now you have people like Dave who exist. I'm not racist. I don't even say the N-word on your disadvantaged to see. Well, yeah, but remember who you're talking to. And also, Anglo, I'm fucking with you. Anyways, but yeah, so you get moments like that, EXO. I also looked back up into what Casey said. You know, there was a lot of mpreg fetishists back in my high school as well. They were. Ooh. They had some problems. That's what happens when you read AO3 too much. You know, since this is Yappin' with Carl and not Yappin' with Marcus, does anybody have any other questions I should answer here and now? Saffronet, do you have anything to say, possibly? Or are we gonna sit here all nice and pretty? I see Carl is roaming closer now, so I think my time is up. Does anyone know who Nick Rakita is? Why does that name seem familiar? Nick Rakita. Why does it always come back to Tumblr? Because Tumblr is the catalyst for a majority of nonsense. I'll be so real with that. Tumblr is where you have a majority of fandoms be created. Tumblr was that one place where people could genuinely actively talk. It wasn't it wasn't like Twitter before Elon took over levels of like insanity, but it got to the point where it was like it catalyzed so much of it. For example, I mean like Homestuck, for starters. Homestuck, you have Ruby, you have a majority of the Tumblr sexy man things that arise from that hellhole. I'm calling it a hellhole because that is in fact the hell. You know, the Javik. And that's another one where it comes from Tumblr, because basically it's wanting it's wanting the ship that people it's wanting the ship to exist so damn hard. Yes, Tumblr was full of case. It's wanting the ship to exist so goddamn hard to the damn point that people are willing it into existence. Yeah, the kid that near the end of season 1. Yes, he did, and I'm willing to wager that the adopted children would be Jinx, Vi, what was that one little kid's name that got fucking bodied in season 2? Yeah, and like a majority. So Tumblr was Chernobyl, kind of. Tumblr. Tumblr was more so a heavy impeded like domino effect. Yeah. Then they banned the porn, then they migrated to other sites. Yes, the great Tumblr migration. The great Tumblr migration caused a lot of insanity to happen. Some of the favorite artists that were on Tumblr switched over to Twitter. Then Twitter got so insanely heavily condensed and coalesced into basically what you see now as a ticking time bomb, in my opinion. Where you have, the people who are complaining about the other people who are saying the most flagrant shit known to mankind, even though that they technically really shouldn't be saying that shit. Admittedly, I don't really give a fuck because, people on the internet are ultimately just incredibly stupid. You can trace a lot of this back. Yes, Struggler, you're correct. Some switched to Twitter, some to Newgrounds. Some did both. I know. I don't know if I should really say a not safe for work artist's name on here, so I'm not going to. But there's one that I heavily do follow, and they, in fact, do both. Some did both. Majority of them did go to Twitter. And with that majority, you have what you can see now as the mega gooner section, as people call it. But yeah, no, Tumblr is a large catalyst of this because of how easy it was. It was a blogging site. When it all started out, people would create things, and this is how fandoms were honestly made. Fandoms were just originally just blog posts and forum posts about your favorite characters. Some GTD and Africa ran with essentially too. Yes, yeah, and rest in peace those poor souls, because wow, did you pick the wrong horse? It's always funny to me because most of the people would type the same. Only to leave when they couldn't do it anymore. Well, it wasn't just sexualizing the female characters anymore explicitly. It was ultimately that they also couldn't sexualize the male characters. And yeah, you could make the argument that, hey, you people are sexualizing the females more than males or whatever. So yeah, you get stuff like this where people will actually go to YouTube and get this stuff. This is actually ultimately this is kind of how I was in high school. I was on Tumblr as well, and the majority of the people, like hell, the first convention I went to. The first convention? This is story time now. I went. And a majority of the people that were all in Black Butler cosplay, do you know how many people there was? It was an egregious amount. Like, unwarranted levels. You know, I could walk a lot of capital. I was also on Tumblr for a time. Struggler, I'm not surprised by that, but where people have had their lack of media literacy revoked from Tumblr just because of people wanting I'm going to quote Persona here a little bit. People want to see what the heart wants to see rather than what it actually says. Because people would rather live in the ignorance of what they yearn for than what it actually means. And that's where you get a majority of people having shipping. You have like pro shippers, you have things like this, and you have this whole discourse between pro shippers, antis, things like that, and you get this from where it all starts. Tumblr.
Tumblr is effectively the cesspit from which most primordial existences of early Ur fans existed from. But as it continued to transform into a hovel for political discourse, the left-wing spiral chose to turn that primordial pool of existence into a cesspit. And the more you go down the rabbit hole, the more it became very obvious that whenever you involve anything with the Tumblr fanbase, the Tumblr fanbase believes in an inverted sense of fraternity, as most of us would with fandoms, where it's not about how long you've been there, it's about how influential you can be in a short amount of time. Which then leads to the never-ending cycle of influence versus power and congruence with absolutely no harmony amongst them. There's harmony in the disorganized chaos and discord that they make for themselves. And that discord would become the way that most of them choose to behave. It's not about what you know, and it's not about what you can prove, it's about how many people agree with you. And the more people you can get to agree with your particular interpretation, the more powerful you are considered, because the more influential you are considered. And no matter what fan base you're talking about, if it has roots in Tumblr, that Tumblr root will be the Tumblrization of the entire work, because they will slowly work through the fandom and either make it into a you're with us or against us side. And even though inside that entire banner people exist inside of a fandom, that reach in the fandom then becomes a us versus them mentality. And whichever one perceives themselves to have the highest reach and the highest influence is considered to be the ones that are listened to. And sometimes the author will choose which one is correct based on which gets them more popularity. For Steven Universe, this was the case. They wanted to go down the direction that would be the best kind of outcomes. They tried to carl themselves, and they ended up carling themselves into a corner. They went down the side that would create the best interest and the biggest influence upon their work that they could feed back off into. So, when Lars got killed off and was reborn as Lars Beeblebrox, fuckboy to the stars, along with a crew full of off-colors, so that there is no such thing as a decision that made them into just the rejected character concepts. Instead, it's us playing with the idea of different types of gems and experiences, because every gem and facet is unique. This led inevitably to them having to now rectify with the part of their fan base that would actively not harass her once but twice in the Zami incident. And then, the way that they chose to behave with certain authors and certain editors, then being treated as though they were
Oh,
with,
God.
with specific editors and storyboarders on her 5-man, 2-man teams, or actually 2-man groups of 5 teams of back-to-back storyboarders who would become responsible for the majority of the fucking editing mistakes that would then get shipped off for animation on the crew amongst the crewniverse. You know, when Jay-Z was not giving her that hot beak sausage, it would be when Ian Jones Quarterly convinced her to start listening to them more and realized that her own storyboarders and her own writers were pushing them in the direction that she did not want them to go to for Yellow Diamond, for Blue Diamond, and especially for Pink Diamond. That would lead to her choosing to, as Exo Crusher is pointing out, wrong side of the screen, Carl, as Exo Crusher is pushing out, things like retconning the origins of Pink Diamond, despite the fact that the origins were told to you by proxy from the Cookie Cat shit. They would rewrite themselves over and over and over again until Sugar got it to a place that she felt like her writers could no longer undermine her opinions and her decisions. And then on the other side of the goddamn spectrum, they're over here bullying somebody into suicide twice because they drew a character too thin. Now, this is one of the best examples that we always go back to, the same way we go back to Dean Takahashi sucking dick at the Cuphead tutorial, because this was everything. There is the interpretation of how the audience sees it is not as important as to how the people inside the fandom from the Tumblr side saw it, and how everybody else who wasn't on Tumblr saw it. Because the viewpoint that they have is the same reason why people act like Discord Jannies trying to groom Discord kittens in Discord now. It was the exact same mapping of behavior. They care a lot about concern, and they care a lot about control, and they care a lot about plotting out narratives, so that when something happens that they chose to do, you don't need to know about the insurrection. You only need to know about who won. But they also have, as Carl always says, a fear of being perceived. Because it's not about them as who they are as an individual. You know? They could be a sheltered wallflower who wants nothing more than to watch their favorite cartoons and anime. But at the same time, with people like I Am Griffineer, you've got this motherfucker writing stalker serial letters to me on my email, while at the same time trying desperately to say that everybody else doesn't understand their content, and nobody else understands what they're trying to say about these dumbass Twitter posts they used to write in the time before Elon. Meanwhile,
I completely forgot about Griffineer. Holy shit.
Most of us, we have no idea where he went. Same thing with 9-Volt. Most of these people, they disappear into the ether, never to be seen and heard from again, because it's less about them and more about the group that they represent. But if you wanted to go find out who they are, it's not that hard. Like, if you want to go keep up on Mallory Jessica Uchihas and whether or not she has continued to steal from that one art store that exists inside of Seattle that I geolocated to the exact tags because they drew it exactly as it appears from the street front, you can go look at the comics. Her at title is still Street Beam by the 9. You can do the same thing with Adixia. Her title is still Tomato Magica. But they've disappeared. Whenever they fall out of the conflicts, so that they can try to lose other people's tales, and they rewrite themselves and rework themselves, and they recover themselves, the Tumblr audience is always a unknowable constant throughout all of source material media. Because now that it has been revamped to a point where I guess they're okay with what they post there now, they have brought enough people back that as long as you don't make it hypersexual, it will more or less be fine. Which is why whenever any audience ends up doing sexual shit, they always ask them, please don't do this on the official tags. Do it under some other specific tag so that you can find the other people who want to do this shit.
Yeah. Two things I did want to mention very quickly to you.
Go ahead.
One, you should totally capitalize on Anglo's interest in you doing your hair. Do some hair ASMR shit. I don't know what you do as you will. And two, to talk to you, Bogdan, about Temu brand fans. Believe it or not, I want to say this. Pardon me. I don't want to say that Tumblr fandoms are just Temu brand fans, because this is what happens when you have a unnecessary feedback loop of sheer toxic positivity in Tumblr or in any space really, where the work cannot be criticized. And this is where you'll witness. You're not witnessing Temu brand fans. You're witnessing hyper fans. They do care about the work. They just care about it to the point where they step off the path. It's basically it's best way I can say this is honestly religion. This is where the origin story has basically has not fed you the thing that you want, so you go off the beaten path and make your own thing. This is how you get several other religions. I'm not going to say it, but that's ultimately what it becomes. It's a type of fanaticism at the end of the day. Did I hit the nail on the head there, Carl?
That's your opinion. I have an entirely different opinion, but more or less. Ever since the invocation of other sites such as TikTok, you basically get fracturings of different types of audiences that basically have what I would call dumbass charters. The charter of Tumblr is we're going to slowly replace the fandom until we're all the fandom, so that we can then take the fandom away from the author. TikTok is we want to become people that care more about hype moments and clout sharking and aura farming, and also become memorable because we're unescapable because short form content is the new earworm. And then you have the YouTube audiences that they like watching content that is created about the content, but they're not completely sold on either of them. They can be a fan of someone's version of the work, yet still have the original work in your mind, and not think that one is superior to the other, and appreciate them for what they have. Whereas the other two types of those audiences would actively fight in the camp of one of the original ones. So literally, one side wants to remake it in their image, the other side wants it to only be about treating it like it's a dumb kooky thing, or a meme that is to be exploited for its highest monetizable and viral value. And then in the middle, oh my shit, 2 cakes! And honestly, I think I like the third audience more, simply because they don't go out of their way to terrorize people and destroy things, because they get a sick joy and pleasure from watching people that they're antagonized get harmed by their choices and actions. They put more energy into defending their right to destroy fandoms than they put into the energy to preserve the right of the concept in the fandoms. It's like that video game that's going to be made where Africans expatriate artifacts from British museums into the hands of people because they've made Killmonger and Black Panther and Wakanda into an aesthetic to achieve, instead of a fictional example of what you should not do. They forget the part where the reason those things were expatriated to museums is because the people in the countries were destroying those figures because they didn't conform to their belief. So rather than preserving a Sumerian tablet that's about 3,000 years older than themselves, they destroy it so that they can replace it with their own version of content. That's basically it. That's everything. You take that philosophy and you apply it across multitudes of the work. No matter what the work is, One side wants it to be destroyed and replace it with what they think is correct. And they are true fanatics. They have fanatical positions, they have fanatical views, they have the fanatical beliefs, and they expunge the beliefs that they do not believe in, just like Inquisitors. Whereas the other side of the audience, they're missionaries. Have you ever once not heard or believed in the philosophy of the ore farming that comes from a YouTube series, an anime short, a anime following, such as something like Solo Leveling, where they are interested in the thing because it's popular? And it's not, though, that they forgot that for these people they do. They would forget. But it's not as though for those that choose to consume things through short-form media, that they stopped caring about other things. It's just that they have prioritized this thing to be the most important thing that consumes their lives now. And then when the next thing comes up, it gets shoveled down in order of priority. Once it reaches a point where it doesn't bring any attention, if they only care about it for the short-form purpose, they will treat it as though they are like Group 1, but it's like reliving and then existing inside of a hyperfixation for the first time again. Which I guess you could call Type 1 Tumblr users. The people who, for them, it wasn't that they wanted to replace their entire life and be all about this thing and be considered as the #1 fan of it. It's just that they had a hyperfixation. And over time, they grew to like other things as well, and they included all these things into their fixation, not just one thing. Whereas the Type 3 Tumblr version, which is the TikTok version, they only care about it if it's relevant. When it stops being relevant, it stops just... They throw it down like Andy in a new toy. They don't want to play with it anymore. Whereas the Type 4s, the people who are basically our generation, and maybe a couple of people who have the ability to differentiate between these people, they are the Type 4s that are able to hold both of these views from Tumblr and from TikTok together, alongside their own personal internal beliefs, as well as their group beliefs that they have that allows them to become fans of multiple things, and they do not shut themselves out of the new experiences or the new potential content. And they're able to consume material and apply to it no ill will or explicit positive association, because they are able to realize that even good advice can come from bad people. And instead, they just see the content for what it is and allow it to exist within its own bubble. So they are the true tourist that has not a desire to make their thing into an entire circle, but instead they are the true tourist that has a proper passport, visa, license, and a timeshare to each thing that they care about. One side is obviously a grifter. It is obviously a tourist. Another side is the elitist. The side in the middle is either undecided or they are the passport tourist, where they go on vacation all the time to that fandom and enjoy that content because it's their home away from home. And when they come back to the content that they normally do, they are able to have the ability to talk about it passionately, where the other side would only speak in the ill, and the other side only speaks in the relative. They speak in the omnipresent sense of not just being in the thing, and not just of the thing, but able to invite you to come be a part of the thing too, while at the same time still having their own personal opinions. It's really dog shit. Because, as Exocrush was saying, it's just like with Attack on Titan. People didn't care about Season 2 and Season 3, or even Season 4, until either it was ending, or until they got to the rumbling. Because as soon as it becomes viral, it's the talk of the town. But before that moment, you would only find people like myself in any of those particular spaces where it mattered. It still is like this, because since one side is revisionist, and then the other side, what would be the word? Time blind? The other side is time blind. Any person that basically has evidence of what has happened and is able to hold more than two things in their brain at a time, they're able to combine this And then this becomes the opinion of that type 4 person. Whereas the type 1 person is sitting here next to them in the middle, because neither of them hate each other. They're not congruent as being against each other. This one isn't going to do anything at all to stop the other person and how they enjoy content. And this person is not going to push their beliefs onto other people. And if they want to come in and come out, they will do so passively. Just like normal people living in a neighborhood. You don't have to get to know your next door neighbor if you don't want to. But you know that they're your next door neighbor. And if they are willing to be nice to you, you're willing to be neighborly to them. Whereas these motherfuckers are the crazy crackhead and the annoying Karen from down the street. The fact that that describes Tumblr is because that's how communities are supposed to be. And Lord have mercy, is it a toxic community to be in, or around, or to even know about? Because you have to be vigilant in order to protect yourself from said community. If you don't keep up on them, they will use whatever dirty-handed tactic in the book that exists amongst progressives, which usually is purity spiraling with some form of the abstract, to justify removing you from being a fan of the thing that you're in, because they want you to remove yourself by design. They don't want you in it. They would rather you leave so they can take control of it, because then they can truly say, we own this space, you're the outsider, because they care about being seen as the number one figure. Whereas the other group doesn't care about that. The people from TikTok and the micro blogging websites, they care more about being a part of the conversation. No matter what the conversation's about, they just want to be in the conversation. That's why you see more people seeing those two groups fight, rather than everybody else in the middle, pretty much having fun, completely removed from them. Because they'll only ever exist in their echo chamber. If you don't use the websites, maybe every now and again you might get some bleed over and some crossover, but you would never know where it came from. Hello, I believe we have a third person to come on air, unless they don't want to. Welcome, Sonalam.
I think this is where I part for now, but I'm happy to be the corporate monkey. Yep, I'll be still here. I'll just be, quiet. And
hey, I just thought I'd use this one to listen in.
Well, you don't have to be in the room in order to listen in. You walk in here, I'm going to assume you want to be on air.
Okay, no problem.
How are you doing?
I just joined. So you're talking about tourists?
More or less. We were just describing Tumblr tourists and how they compare against TikTok tourists.
I know little about that, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you have something specific that you wanted to talk about?
No, not particularly. I'm sorry.
Okay. That's no problem. So, you tell me about what you know about tourists. Give me your opinion.
There's a lot of people online who have a lot of opinions about hobby stuff, all kinds of hobby stuff. You have that stuff in you have those people in D&D, for example. You have those, or any role-playing game. You have those people in anime, and basically, I thought about it. I thought about it a bunch of years ago, and I came to the conclusion that these people are trying to gain the prestige of having invested time into a hobby, and without doing the work, which isn't work to a fan, because a fan will check up on stuff and get informed and read a lot of stuff and watch a lot of stuff, and eventually in their very small subculture they will gain some nerd cred maybe, but that's basically a tourist is somebody who wants to get into that nerd subculture and get the cred without the work, so to speak. So they're not really that invested, but everybody is supposed to be treated the same, more or less.
Mm-hmm. It is Interesting when it happens, because ironically, I can see an exact example of what I'm describing here on Twitter. 1 second. So, right here, we have an example of a person who definitely should not be on Twitter. It's a meme about hags and hag maxing, and then the person tweeting from it, ironically, it's that I Hate Soccer account user again, which I had to cover last time. I need every guy who does this about women who are in 30s or their hags. I need them to be ripped in half so hard that you can hear each individual vertebrae pop. 116k likes. This kind of tourist and this type of opinion about people, this is something that you would only usually really get a deep dive perspective of from the never-ending nestled child threads that would come from Tumblr. Like, you get a person that sees this meme on Twitter, they screen cap it from Twitter, they try to edit out the name of the person in question, so they don't even get the original source that it came from. So they can't find out if they are saying, hey bro, is she ugly? Is she a fat, ugly woman who you should never have children? Or is it just a thread full of people saying, fuck, I'm trying to make her different. I want to give her love and appreciation and never-ending creep eyes. They will take it to Tumblr. They will then speak endlessly about how, wow, incels, chuds, incels. Then, over on the other side of the internet, somewhere like 4chan, they'll see this image, and you'll hear people make the same level of jokes about hags, but now it's them as Samwise Gamgee actively describing the ways to take care of hags and to have sex with hags. Meanwhile, the people in the middle only know of the meme, and while there might be some people in Type 4 that know of the meme and they enjoy the jokes that are made about it, they're able to understand how crazy the person in the middle really sounds like if they're trying to convince somebody from the outside that this is normal and this is how everybody should discuss something and talk about something. This is a perfect example of exactly the encapsulation of that situation. We just described how it was with Deltarune, and the fact that an author is being forced to change his work because the audience that he has is the second type of Tumblrite that will try to take control away from his work if he doesn't placate them somehow. And here we have the example of another member of that group, off of what you just said. I get annoyed of seeing these groups most of the time that I see them because they're useful, but you can't talk about them all the time, because then you give them more credence to sound more important than they actually are. The group themselves is not what's important. It's that their group opinion represents the whole. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Basically, what needs to happen for creative people is that they... I don't know. I don't even know if it's that... It's probably not easy, and I don't even know if it's possible. Is getting a really good filter and idea for, okay, this person is a fan, basically. This person has been with me for a while. Yeah, as opposed to people who get it over social media and immediately jump to an opinion.
Yeah. See, actually, if you don't mind, I'm going to use you to answer a question that Lemon Duck asked me earlier. And by that, he asked me about this, and then he asked me what can be done about this. So I'm going to answer that question with you. Everybody who's been watching Yap-In from the first episode, because this is going to be something I do all the time now. It's literally always on Sunday. There's no reason why I can't have it. It's basically my form of the daily set for people who come from Dev's audience. A creator is at the mercy of the people they allow to be influential in their audience. To say that an author only ever creates without hearing feedback from their audience is a lie. We have to work with our chats, with our audiences, with our consumers, in order for us to be able to build a culture that can then be relatively recognized as whether or not they are in or out. That's why shibboleths exist. We know who is a true fan, and we know who's simply a passive tourist by the fact of whether or not they know information that would be relevant as a password to give them access to said audience. One of the earliest forms of shibboleths, especially when it came to Tumblr and Something Awful, was the bacon narwhals at midnight. When a group password, yeah, it's stupid, but that was their password. When you gave the shibboleth as the password to get involved, you got to see a different kind of personality. But when this kind of information became nomenclature, they was no longer capable of trusting who was truly in, or who just got in because they knew a guy who knew a guy who knew a guy who also knew the password. Excuse me. So, what ended up happening is that you've gotten to where we are now, where you have Type A, and Type B, and Type C, and Type D. In this context, we're going to use the examples I just used earlier. You got the first era Tumblr users, you've got the second generation, and then all of the evolutions of Tumblrite users, all the Tumblrinas, all the people who came from the era of the bedroom feminist, all of the hags who have not hag-maxed into becoming a mother. You have the short-form media generation, which includes both the people who are consuming it and the people who are producing it, who have, through whatever way possible, used popular thing to grow their channels and to grow their influence, until they would then fuck off and only return when it becomes time to grift off that thing again. For an example like that, I can actually use Mac and libertarianism. She's somebody who grew her audience as one of the main reply girls, who used anime and cosplays to keep herself involved with an audience, and then the moment that she fucked off and got a husband, you did not see and hear from her again until she was pregnant. Then she came back with the pregamine, then disappeared again, and I guess now she's doing it again because she's pregnant again. These are people that don't support and would never support unless they already had a material benefit to get out of it. Now, I'm not going to use the word grifter, because a grifter is a person who maliciously has no belief in the thing and is just saying it to get access to you. The better example to use for people in general, you should just call them opportunists. They're opportunists when they choose to do it the other way around. They might like the thing, even if it's a tangential like, or they might really have been a fan who was a day one member, or was a early generation member, if they weren't a later adopter in the tree of adaptation and early adoption. They aren't a lollygagger. They're not somebody who came along with what the normal third group of influence was, which would be the tourists, the unironic grifters and tourists. But there's somebody that, until the energy dies out, they're there. And then when it dies out, they go back to the thing they used to be a part of, because they're not a true D-type member. And then the passport tourists that are, well, actually, passport tourists is probably not the right name to call them, because that name actually describes that group. I should properly call them timeshare tourists. They pay into the thing, they keep up the real estate, and they often use their timeshare to go enjoy the content that they usually don't get to have as a regular involvement with their material or with the channel if there's somebody that does not actually get into being a broadcaster or a consumer that then uses that content to then involve their own works with crossover to each other. The thing that you have to do is exactly what you said. A creator has to create some type of grand filter that will filter out all the unwanteds and undesirables. What that filter looks like depends on each person. For me, that filter is whether or not the person actually engages and gets involved. I don't like revolving door fan bases. And the thing that I'm describing is basically revolving door fan bases. That's the thing that I'm describing, that's the thing that Jade described, that's the thing that you're describing. People that they don't care enough about the work to stay there and be a part of it and engage with it the same way that they engage with everything else. They leave it, and then they come back to it when the energy in the room decides for them to benefit off of it. It's like trying to optimize your fandom, right? Same thing with trying to optimize your business plan or optimizing your business portfolio. You cannot have a revolving door fan base, because it basically means when you're no longer in the limelight, they will fucking betray you. They will leave you behind and they will betray you. For the last 3-ish years, we've basically been getting slowly rid of all of the all the fandoms inside just my audience alone, by virtue of us having put together Yap-In. Originally, at first, it was putting together concepts such as Carl at Home. And then, from the news streams, putting together everything else, which eventually became what I'm now calling Cajun Carl's Black Box, also known as the CGG content, which would otherwise be known as Carl at Play. Carl at Home, Carl at Play. Then, I created Versus Chat, which was audience participation. Now, I have standardized what somebody before called Yappuccino, as in Yap Pacino, what I have called Yap-In. Because I used to call it Calling Carl, but Yap-In with Carl's better, because we just be sitting here talking. These 4 things are my grand filter. The people who do not watch my material need to go watch the content, because more than likely what's going to be talked about on Sunday happened between Monday and Saturday. If there's something that's on my mind that I want to talk about with someone, I'm probably going to wait to talk about it on Sunday. Simply because if I wait to talk about it on Sunday, it gives everybody else the greater material conflux to go enjoy and consume that thing. So they too can understand what it is that I'm talking about and why it's important to the conversation. Because it's just like doing research for a fucking book report or a project. If I want to talk about something that I saw, like this week is day 3 of Summer Games Fest. I've seen day 1. I have not broadcasted day 2, and currently the activities of day 3 are currently happening. Because I ended up falling behind by virtue of choosing to take some time off to go spend quality time with my woman, my child, I now have to catch back up and watch that material at a later date, which I'll choose to do. I said probably later today. It might even go as later as Monday or Tuesday, to be honest, because those should be off days where nothing else is happening. I get the ability to fill myself back in with what's going on. From that position, if somebody asks me the opinion, like I said at the top of the show, I don't know. But if it's to do with something that happened like in the past, so Yap-In number 16, or is today 16 or is it 17? I can't remember what I titled my stream, Kappa. 16. So from 16 to backwards, all the way back to the first one. Anything that happened in that week, if somebody wants to know about what I did, the broadcasts and the live streams and the videos that would have been premiered on my channel from that date to that date, that is the content. That is going to be within the realm of knowledge. Otherwise, just like has always been the case, the people who will be calling into Yap-In are calling to tell me about something, or to talk to me about something that they've witnessed, that they've thought about, that they've heard, that they want a question answered about, that then grows into a further conversation back and forth amongst the bunch of us that are here to be in the live chat to watch it, and those that are at work and don't have the ability to, or are currently engaged in their own lives, where it's not that they don't care, it's just, I made prior plans. They get the ability to now have a place to go to find out about it, just like a proper newsletter should function. So in this system, everything that you could get, and everything that would be limited to myself, as well as the crossover of other audiences, because in here I've got DevCord, I've also got the members of DevCord that feel like they can't post to DevCord because of a particular moderator whose name will not be repeated. I've got crossover from other audiences like Aiden's and Dev's and Jay's, people who are more common to speak inside of other audiences than necessarily mine, because they are also doing their own thing. People who are going to school, people who are working for a living with a regular job, the kind of crossover that comes in the gaming sphere in general, where you can have multiple things that you're a fan of, even though you have a specific hyperfixation that you're a fan of, and then you have different kinds of content creators that you're fans of. You're not truly committed to them into being a super fan, but you are a fan of them. You have the ability, through my filter, to get to know my content and myself. Then, if somebody completely unknown to me wants to learn about that work, the number one place you can send them to go understand that culture as the revolving door of content brings you to my work, where they can learn everything they want to know about me from me, rather than learning it by proxy somewhere else. If a person from inside my audience or from outside my audience tries to speak about something that has to do with me without actually understanding who I am and who you are and who we are as consumers of content, it can easily be debunked by just simply listening to what I say, whether it be a take or it be a conversation. Because the worst example of me that could be used out of context could become then the example that everybody recognizes me for. If I go off on someone and they don't give them the context that this is somebody who was actively choosing to be a nuisance, then they use that to prototype what my actions must be. And therefore, it then causes a downturn to us, because then now we have been labeled at a distance by people who don't know about what we do here, because they don't have the context to know, even though the open door policy exists to give them the chance to find out. Because really, it's like any type of group. If you are a new person, you need to get to know the culture that is inside that place. If you take no time getting to know it, and you believe that you can just walk in and walk out, and every time you show up somewhere, it's like, actually, you don't know, I'm actually a leader of this thing, and nobody's ever heard of you. It's the same concept as walking into somebody's house and saying, you didn't know this, but I actually own this house, despite the fact that I've been paying the mortgage on it for X amount of years. It's super fucking stupid. And ironically enough, again, with Exocrusher, this is exactly how video games have been for the longest time. You can jump out of any fandom, you can jump out of any context, you can jump out of any sphere of influence, and nobody's going to care, because most of those people are themselves revolving door tourists themselves. They care more about the fact that Goku can hit the gritty than they do about the fact that Fry can hit the gritty, more than they do about the fact that Hatsune Miku unironically has an attack called the Miku Beam that lasts for as long as that fucking meme song exists. And the people who were there to play the Battle Royale mode, or even to play Fortnite in general, whether they were trying to play the Save the World mode, which I'm pretty sure they finally got around to actually making real, they're not there for the Battle Royale. They're not even there for no build. They're not even there for Save the World. They're not even there for whatever fucking context they're in there for. They're in there for to be in the culture and of the culture without actually having to pay dues to the culture. This is what creates communities where people can just simply try to cancel someone because it's no longer their hyperfixation. So therefore, the grand filter to stop this is to actually have a dedicated, dependent audience. And to somewhat not hold it against these people should they want to. I actually discussed this with the moderators the other week because of a particular type of user who has a penchant of doing this, specifically inside of our audience. What would happen is they would join the server, they would get to see things or the server, or they would join the server on first join, where they don't have the ability to see everything that is past the group of casual colored memes. They don't see gamers, they don't see the Afropolar, they can't see exceptionalism if they do not ID register, they can't see into current event station, and all they can see is the important tabs, and they haven't been punished in some way, so they don't see the tag with a form post with the infraction that they need to address with us, the moderators, or myself, the user, from the Mod Country Club. They think it's lame and it's boring. They don't really know about my content. They were just told to go join there from someone. And then the next time I'm doing something that might pop off and go viral amongst my audience, either between myself, Jay, whatever else I'm involved with, or whatever thing comes up from this current work that I'm doing behind the scenes that I can't show you all yet because it's not done, it's still in progress. They'll come back in and they'll stick their head back in to find out, hey, yo, what's going on here? But then they speak with the energy as though they have superiority over the people who have been there the entire time. Because even if they were a old head figure, so let's say comparatively there was a role that I had, metaphorically speaking, let's say I had a role that was called The Real Ones. That person's supposed to be higher than one of the boys. This person comes back in after leaving, nobody knows who the fuck they are, for whatever reason they left, they come back in and they're ordering people around with authority, as though they're a moderator or if they're me. When somebody asks them, who the fuck do you think you are talking to us like this? They then say, you don't know? I'm one of the real ones. Nigga, I don't know the fuck that is. We don't know who you are. This nature of interaction, where they choose to act like elitists, is what makes fandoms toxic. So, that broadcast that I did with Jay, and then when I did the re-up of that content, specifically speaking about the Birdman, and his takes that he's been having as he's been taking out the trash by making his Exposing the Grift series, where he chose to antagonize the Critical Drinker, Geeks and Gamers, Nerdrotic, and the two men that are responsible for it, black fans of comic books in general, because they're not real fans, they're just Uncle Toms. People like Mahler, because Long Man Bad, you're just nitpickers. You're nitpicking. Which is the same thing we got out of the energy of that Anti-Ramuccia video, where supposedly having a long-winded answer, known by just simply talking about something, is bad. Yapping is bad. You can't be able to have a single interpretation and you're just nitpicking for the purposes of being a nitpicker, despite the fact that you're not an objective thinker, you're not an objective speaker. Whatever way it's described, whatever the factor they're trying to factorialize for is, these groups choose to speak in a way where everybody is supposed to walk on eggshells around them, because the authority that they supposedly have means that they should command a certain type of respect. But the respect isn't given, therefore it isn't earned. To control for this, you basically have to make it that they have to work back towards that role again. Okay? It doesn't matter how long they were there. You should be expected to be a member of a community. No one's saying that you can't go inactive and then come back. It's just a matter of, if you have been here and then you leave and then you come back, you should be expected to learn what the fuck's going on again. If we're trying to solve a problem, or rather, we're trying to set up an event, the person who come back and has no context about what anything is happening is going on for, and they want to then act as though they are the authority, because by rule of role, I have most important pull, so you should listen to what I say. We're not going to do it that way. Because it's going to be done off what the mods think, it's going to be done off what I think, it's going to be done off the community thinks. The person who has the longest time in the community that stays around is the people who are going to be listened to. It's not a matter of dismissing them because we don't care about your opinion. Because 5 years ago, we would all know that the reason I found myself in a lot of my holding pattern is that I didn't want to be mean and rude to people, to make them think that this was what I was doing to people, especially when it comes to people who would support via monetization, which is why I originally made what was originally known as the Carl Negroid, the Carl Negroid role, which I have now since then turned into the United Negro Carl Founder role, because originally it was named after an in-joke of a slur that was said to me that I turned into a term of endearment for myself, simply to make a joke out of the situation. What I do now is that instead I try to give people the space to be seen and heard, and only when they have chosen to be incongruent against what I want to do as a creator do I start to minimize their opinion. So it's like false reports inside of a help desk. The first few times we're going to try to understand what it is that you're asking for, what it is you're trying to communicate, and rather than immediately jump down somebody's throat, I'm going to give them the space to be heard and seen, like anybody should. Because mistakes can happen. Opinions that might not be a problem, but somebody wants to feel that they're being seen about and heard, that's fine. Every time afterwards, especially if the person has been told that this is the case of why we do something, then I start to minimize their opinion. That's where, if you act in a way where I think you're being a concern troll, or I think you're trolling for attention, that's when we start thinking, maybe you don't need to be in this broadcast. Maybe I don't need to respond to your question. Maybe I don't need to do this. Maybe I don't need to do this. Until my opinion becomes low enough that I just simply I know that the opinion exists, but I don't acknowledge it from the person it's coming from. Because the reason they may be bringing it up might be for something other than the actual concern of what's actually important, right? So if we're in a fire, and there are two paths to take us to safety. One is more treacherous than the other. One is more safe for every person to get through. That doesn't mean that one is death and the other one is safety. If one is more safe than the other, and somebody comes down both paths, one person is someone who's always been here. The other one is a person who's only returned because, oh my god, I heard that the clubhouse was on fire. What should matter in those kinds of situations should be what is the most useful information that keeps us safe, right? What information helps us with the goal that we're attempting to achieve? And the example I'm giving, the person who's supposed to be coming in from danger, where they are entering from a safe place to then go to the dangerous place to bring us back to the safe place, is the filter. If you're in a house fire and you're trying to escape the fire because you were in the house, everything bad that could have happened in a fire happened. You got nicked, you got clobbered on the head, a flaming beam fell on top of you and burnt the shit out your back. You got carbon monoxide, you're wheezy, you're woozy, you can't tell where true north is. In, out of the door, comes a firefighter. You're going to go with the firefighter. In this case, the firefighter is a normal community member. Their goal is to push you towards good outcomes, not bad outcomes. And certainly not outcomes that only benefit one type of person. In option number 2, there are 2 doorways. One is a firefighter, and the other one is community volunteer firefighter Sam. Sam tells us, if you go out this door, you gotta go over another stairway, you gotta jump over a moat, you're gonna have to figure out how to do a puzzle to drop a drawbridge, and then we're gonna have to toss the one guy that's got the bum leg and the wheelchair user across a giant chasm, and then we'll get to safety, versus the firefighter telling you, just go out this door and you'll be safe. We're going to go into the direction of the firefighter again. Legitimately speaking, these are 2 paths that could lead to the same goal. But one of them has a lot more work involved with it than the other. We're going to go the way of the firefighter, which, in purpose of this metaphor, is a regular known community member. Because they understand the layout of the place. They understand the layout. They have information about the layout of the building and where all the safety exits are. They understand how to get through these situations. Blase, 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 blase. The regular kind of things that you would recognize for, where that person then becomes recognized as a normal community member and thus a regular community leader. Savvy? Everyone following along with me?
Yes.
Okay. So, here's a third situation. In the third situation, rather than the idea of safety, we're now talking about content strategies. A person who has never been in the content gives an idea about, hey Carl, you know what you should do? You should do porn. A person who is a returning community member, who has no idea of what I've last been doing, says, hey Carl, what you should do is you should become an OnlyFans creator. But what you should do is you should be putting your normal content on there, but the only difference is that you're not wearing a shirt. In this situation, both of these suggestions are not going to be things that I want to do. Because this is then where a lot of the issues become, right? Ex-friends, ex-fan members, returning members who haven't spent enough time lurking to understand what the current culture is and what we will do and what we won't do, or what I would do and what I wouldn't do, and those that are not willing to put money on the idea. So they aren't willing to invest for the thing that they want, but they expect me to do it and possibly tank my career while doing so. We are not likely to follow those suggestions, not because they're not fun, but because it doesn't lead to an outcome that benefits everybody. as has been the kick that I've been on for a while now, because I am a parent now. I am responsible for the survival of not just myself and not just my family with this woman, but also my normal blood family, whom which I care about and live with, as well as the greater outcomes that has on my career and all the other people that are in my friendship group that I work with. Because I don't just do content by myself, and I don't just do content with my audience. I also do content with my friends and my associates. And the deluge of managing the situation that is friendships and collaborations and acquaintance, that's a lot of shit that requires you to be involved with those people. That doesn't mean that because you didn't get a phone call from your best friend of 15 years for the last 3 months that they don't care about you. It just means that that they're in a place in their life right now where they don't have a lot of time. And when they do have time to spend with you, they spend that time with you as best as they can. These two people in this example are people who have not spent that time and didn't even take the interest in getting to learn. They just simply want the outcome out of what they would wish to have, simply because either they thought it would be a funny idea for them, or something that they would benefit for themselves, for them, that wouldn't necessarily benefit myself or the wider audience. Don't worry, Horror, I'll find out about it at a later date. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. Ultimately, at the end of the day, getting people on the goal to be a part of the active live audience is the first important part. After that, spending time doing those riskier ideas, that is also a focus, but it takes less priority over the majority of what's being done all the time. Because unfortunately, that is the problem with revolving door fans. Genshin Impact, Limbus Company, any video game that is effectively a gacha game, especially if it's on a time clock, where if they don't make a certain amount of money within 6 months after the project was announced, that project will be closed in that same time period. That's happened way too many times at this point. The idea is fun, but how it actually creates money for some people's interest, completely non-existent. Because you'll play a gacha game, right? But you're not the whale that they're looking for. That's going to spend $10K a month just to be keeping up with the Joneses. You get what I'm saying? For this idea, this is like live service games. The idea of a live service game, which pretty much gacha games also are, but let's use a better example like, say, MOBAs. Free-to-play MOBAs with a pathway where you can unlock every character if you pay $30 minimum versus the ones where it's a constant ever-evolving chart and list of characters. There is no way to unlock all of them at the door unless you're willing to pay money out of your pocket to buy power, and the ability of buying power is gated by how much time you can spend in the game. And even if you buy all of the purchases, you're still at the mercy of the RNG system that can then still fuck you from that moment moving forward. Those levels of investment creates a problem for those creators, because now they have a revolving door full of players, right? If I want to play the first Descendant, maybe I only play using one type of Descendant, and I never put any amount of focus into any of the other Descendants, which is the wrong way to play, because you're actually meant to use all of the Descendants for the purposes they're designed for, because some characters have explicit methods and specific types of content that requires you to be invested in that way. So, what is her name? Sharon is meant to be used on the stealth missions. Enzo is meant to be used to open the vaults. On missions that are about completing an objective with speed, you can use any character that happens to be a very good focus on either infiltrating and then eliminating enemies in a group, or for defending a position. So, Bunny, what is he called? The horn guy whose name is escaping me. Apex or whatever the fuck, despite him being literally my first character, those player characters, no matter how many ways you could buy outfits for them, mix and match them, buy weapons, or rather, get the materials to then unlock the recipes, to then craft the recipes, to then unlock the next level of recipe, to then unlock and craft the upgrade material that you need to reset your not your warframe, but they might as well be warframes, to reset your descendants level so that they can then be leveled up again, so you can then put on another customizable symbol to further optimize your character's build. They are looking for a whale that will pay tens of thousands of dollars. But they also don't want to cut out the opinion of every person that they put the game down because the game's system is too complex. It's too hard. It requires structure. It requires a bit more refining. Hell, this is half the reason why most of these games usually exist in a state of early access. You don't have any idea where they're going to go to once you've developed them, and then once you do, you decide whether or not you really want to stick with them for the long term or not.
I thought it was wild that Warframe took off. I played that when it was in early access. I even spent money on it while it was in early access.
Yeah, because like...
I lost all my Warframes though. I logged in a while ago and they were gone.
Yeah. Like, outside of complete fucking fabrications of issues that can limit from, my characters have been deleted from the switchover. I would like to get some help with this, but you know what? Fuck it, I'm gonna go do something else. 2, you've made a inconsequential problem that has now fucked the way that the game works on a fundamental level to the point where you get not Path of Exile, but you get the split between RuneScape 2 and what eventually becomes retail RuneScape 3, and then what becomes old school RuneScape based on RuneScape 2007 and beyond, with audience interaction through the form of the paid members posts, which then adds content to the game. Sometimes even independent of the opinion of the people being asked for, because sometimes you do want people to give opinions about it on whether or not how they feel about the feedback, but you recognize there's something about the game's fundamental systems that needs to be fixed to make them better and thus make it a more enjoyable experience. You don't want to reject that outside opinion, but you know for a fact this thing has to be done. And if you were to give it to the ever-evolving cycle from the audience members, if they had to choose between giving themselves infinite power and telling themselves they can't have this because that kind of balance is bad, they would destroy their own game. And so you have to then take their opinion and then curb their enthusiasm. You can have this, but you can't have this. You can have this, but you can't have it like this. You got to do this to do it instead. That's an eternal game, especially without even having to involve money. Because the moment that you involve a resource other than time, you're now debating and competing for time against all those other systems, all those other audiences, all those other gameplays, and all those other loops that then would feed back on themselves. And then now you gotta filter not just between the people who are giving you opinions, but do you play the game? Do you actually have any investments? And then that leads to shibboleths of its own. Because, oh, well, I used to play during beta, but when have you been playing the content recently? Or, I've been a beta player, and I've been playing the game for 15 years, and here's all of my accolades. Am I now allowed to have an opinion about this topic that people tell me that I'm not supposed to have an opinion about? And shit like that.
Also, there's Asmongold brought this up about Warcraft playtesting stuff at some point, where he said, guys, these super hardcore pro World of Warcraft players, they are not who the game is made for.
Yes.
They have the most time invested and know the most about the game, but that's not the target audience at this point. It needs to be more accessible, basically.
Yes.
Which was interesting. Also another interesting thing in this feedback from in games, feedback from player to developer is if you play Half-Life 2 with the developer comments on, and there's again and again and again stories about sometimes the most let's say interesting, but we could also in some cases say stupid or quaint players. For example, one guy who picked up everything in the train station, and he didn't really compute that there's a physics engine here, because old school gaming, and he thought he was picking up things into his inventory, and then he at some point he basically froze for a couple minutes and tried every button until some guy talked to him, and he was like, where's the inventory though? I picked up all this stuff. That one is an interesting case, I think. Valve gets accused in some analysis videos about Half-Life 2 that they listen a bit too much to everybody, basically, and make it a bit too streamlined.
Yes. And that's always the fear that a lot of people do have when, oh no, my game is being pandered to the lowest common denominator. It's Jover Bros. Whoa, whoa. Cue the emoji with the dog at sunset with its eyes closed, saying, oh damn, we cooked for real. At some point, every audience and developer has a tool to create this loop where they are able to address and keep up with the fact of whether or not they are on the straight and narrow of what their vision is meant to be. Now, I used the examples earlier to show you the frustrations that comes with this. We've had discussions like this before, where whenever I describe this, the amount of passion I put into describing it is because that is how annoying it is. People who have played a game with a sit and survive playstyle, such as FNAF, that's what it feels like. You're constantly checking over your shoulder, making sure, alright, am I keeping on the right path? Is this the direction I need to go in? Do people support this kind of work? Is this what we're trying to do? Does this feel good? Does this feel right? When it's just yourself, you feel like the world is your oyster. When you start involving all the levels of overreach that it can involve with, there is a point in between where your growth is being curtailed by audience capture. And that audience capture feels like a hand that is pulling you down. Sometimes it actively can be. If you find yourself in the position of a silent biker, you become somebody who can't ever do IRL content because you're only making your money off of giving political head-ass opinions that can be used to support your explicitly terroristic fan base that really wants to glaze terrorism because anything that's not American is bad. But you want to do other shit, but you can't because if you do make that other shit, your audience will leave. Or you come from a fan base that wants to break out and do another type of content, but if you do that content, half of the fan base will be split and lost. And no matter what you do, you still end up in the same position that most content creators find themselves in, much like how Dave Chappelle found himself in, that we described as having your hand caught in a honey tree, and the poachers are coming to kill you. The problem is that in order to evolve, sometimes you just have to start taking a fucking hatchet to your audience, and you have to start fucking cleaving away at it. Not in the way in which you're trying to destroy it, but you're instead clearing the underbrush. You're filtering the people who can stay in the new evolution and the ones who cannot. Or you're willingly doing riskier things for the purpose of trying to explore the kind of work that you can do, or, quote, find yourself. And then the people who will go into the revolving door and will leave and will only come back after that transformation has occurred, that would then be the core of the audience that you then start making content for. It doesn't mean that you ignore all of them. It would just mean that during that transformation period, where people are telling you, why are you doing this type of work? Why are you doing this type of work? What you need to do is this kind of work. You don't necessarily follow their opinions because they're not on the journey that you're on with everybody else who's with you on that journey. And the people who are the ones that you listen to, because those are the ones that you're bouncing your ideas off of and you're using as springboards. Then once you achieve the evolution that you want, you will at some point lose a certain percentage of that group. Let's say the number is half. You lose 50% of your audience because you want to go do a different type of work than normal. You do that different type of work. Those people that were revolving door content users come back, and then you just you try to get them on the same page, but they're still living in a version of your work that isn't relevant anymore. So let's say any of the things that I've done before or after I announced my relationship with Star, which would be like January of last year, if I'm thinking correctly right about. They are more than happy to come back in and find their place. But that doesn't mean I'm going to be doing the same things I did before, right? Because that would be considered a pivot. I've gone in a different direction. Maybe once in a blue moon, I engage with it, but it will not be like how I would have done it all the time, right?
To be fair, I think there is a lot of like if you're talking these time spans, I think there's a lot of tolerance for this. Where you're like, okay, he's doing this now, basically.
Yes.
I think the problem is more the people who are on board throughout, who at some point reach. It might be an event, or it might happen over time, but who over time reach a point where they're like, I'm not interested anymore, and or man, this has changed, and this really used to be different. And the thing is, at that point, that's fine too.
Yes, that's fine too.
But I think those are a bit more aggressive about it usually.
It depends on the type of thing you're doing. When this happens to concepts like video games and franchises, if all of a sudden Final Fantasy, well, this happened to Final Fantasy. If all of a sudden a turn-based franchise becomes an action platformer SPS shooter that has pay-to-win elements, obviously people will say, oh wow, I didn't know that Final Fantasy became that. And if they don't do a massive recorrection to put the content back in tone with what they wanted the work to be, to where it started from, they're going to massively lose their audience.
Yeah, this is basically what happened to Hitman, as far as I know. I was a huge Hitman fan back in the day with Hitman 2, Silent Assassin. Was my favorite game. Contracts was awesome atmosphere. 4, whatever. 5 turned into this very cinematic, very scripted, very you can really just play it one time kind of game, and it completely threw me off. As far as I know, the new stuff, ever since that first game after Hitman 5, has been pristine, but I haven't brought myself to try it yet. I've been burned once, basically.
Yes, and whatever the hell fucking World of Assassins is supposed to be. This kind of content is something that you would expect out of the energy of Payday 2 and all of the clones like it. Because Lord knows nobody liked Payday 3. Not even the content creators who were paid to play it. So when Kirsch came up, and she had been supporting that video game, which was basically a knockoff Payday 2, and that company backstabbed her by trying to, by basically dropping her from the controversy instead of standing by her in the controversy. There are people who are basically tuning in for the first time, or in the longest time forever, or are people who are entering Kirsch's revolving door, which definitely would apply to us covering that event. Because even though I'm not the biggest VTuber fan, I understand and I have my own Oshis. I might not tell all of you all who they are, but I have my own Oshis. And us learning about that, it's like, oh wait, well who the fuck is this Crime City company? Oh, they were supporting her, and then they dropped her in favor of fucking anal violence in Nara TV? Okay, good. Okay, fuck you, goodbye, we're uninstalling. And then the people that were supposed to drop it, they didn't even support the content. Basically, a bunch of people went out of the door because Kirsch took them with her, and then the people who were coming in then left through that revolving door because, oh no, they have problematic content. We're leaving. We're not allowed here. I don't feel safe. Ugh. And now they're standing there back at crime boss Rockay City thinking, what the fuck happened? Where'd our audience go? At least they will be when they come to check the numbers, if they do not address this before they end up finding themselves going out of business. They'll show back up, back at that content, and they'll try to figure out where they went wrong, when clearly what they should have done was to stay on target with the original vision. When you then start thinking about this for content creators in terms of the errors of their work, a good example to actually use is JonTron. Because I definitely was, well, I was surprised, but was expectant when you think about how far he's come to where he is now, unironically, a father too. Like I mentioned earlier. JonTron starts out as a member of some of the founding members of Normal Boots. He then makes his content. He does Game Grumps. He falls out of favor with Game Grumps. He gets replaced by Dan Avedon and that core group that was now behind the Grumps. It transforms itself into this weird amalgamation of Rhett and Link, where now you've got the Game Grump channels, you've got all of the additional content that comes from the different content cycles they had, like the Steam Train, and whatever the fuck they were doing with Susie, his wife, the things going on with Dan specifically, the jokes with Ninja Sex Party and whatnot. Meanwhile, over in the JonTron universe, reinvents his content, goes and does the shit that he's doing, still making the same type of work, which is basically a higher brow variation of the same kind of work that Ethan Klein was making. He does his thing. He gets married, has his wife, then has his child with his wife, and you look back over at something like the Game Grumps, and it's just a trash fire from the bottom to the top. But the people who are now fans of it would never be able to tell you that. And if you ask them how it became like this, they would play that never-ending clip farm of where supposedly JonTron's just a mouth-spewing bigot. He has no idea of what his audience is there for, or what they actually care about. He's turned bad. He's gone toxic. He's become a bad creator. Which is relevant to the exact same thing that happened when In Praise of Shadows tried to attack Wendigoon. Wendigoon, being who he is able to show that, look, I don't know where he comes from, I don't know why he acts like this, I don't know what he believes and thinks, but I don't want people to attack him on behalf of protecting me. Acts like a class act. Literally all of it happens because he is supposed to be seen as a bad person, because he has conservative views, and he comes from Appalachia, and In Praise of Shadow thinks that this inherently means that he must be a leftist, because you can't be from here and not have these views. And in that situation, you have the same comparative story. A person either transforms themselves into, or becomes a sign of something that then someone else either chooses to say, this is good and you should be for this, or this is bad and you should be against this. And like a revolving door, people who might have supported that content creator before the controversy either no longer do afterwards, or people that would not have supported the person who created the stink of bad to exist had they talked about it, stop talking about them and joining their content in favor of going over to the other person. In the case of JonTron, literally the Destiny event was responsible for that. And people will say to high heavens, that's what's good. And yet, in the events that have transpired since, JonTron has been nothing but a force for good since. Period. It is inaugural, because without them, they have gone up. Versus in the case of Aaron Hansen, him having to rectify the fact that he has created an empire that was based on snark and negativity, that he has to constantly transform himself in order to remove the stink of his problems that always come back, because there are always going to be people who remember what kind of thing he did before and remember the drama that they created in the absence of his removal and his departure. Sure, bring in Daniel, bring in Dan Avedon, have him as your new co-host. have Ninja Sex Party, including Gay Brian and Dan, be a part of it. But then you lose Holly, and thus Ross, because Ross is divorcing from his wife, and that becomes a thing, so he's not there. You get rid of Super Mega, because hey, Super Mega, they're good creators and they're good editors of ours, but we can't have them in here. They have the rotten stink on them. Never mind the fact that they would then get harassed by Lex Updog trying to litigate a problem that was interpersonal into something that was now a sexual escapade involving Pete and his online. Then Ethan becomes Eden, while at the same time still trying to basically put the stink on them by saying they're not safe people. Then you have the entire dramas that could encapsulate the nature of how they speak or how they cover video games, or the intentional desire behind one or more people, but it's almost always Aaron Hansen, actively making it impossible for people to truly enjoy a video game because they go in with the nature that it must be bad, so they pull a DSP and play it in the worst way possible with the intention of bringing it to an end because they hate the game that much that they want you to hate it too. Look over on the other end, look inside, and it's just JonTron having fun. Even if the experience behind the camera, as he's creating the skits and the jokes in the series, are what it is, one thing is obviously not like the other. Not to mention anything that comes from Oni Place, which in the series of anything that is an SMP, whether it be a group of people or a single person with another person that they're recording with, simply that it's just not them by themselves, and sometimes even if it is them by themselves. So, Chugga Conroy, Nintendo Capri Sun, remember when he had drama? Remember, guys? Remember that woman and that girl and that thing? Is something inherently sexual you don't remember, but you know is bad? This same problem exists there, and thus the revolving door incites people to come in when the drama's fresh and to leave when the drama is off. I need to go to the bathroom again, but I need to finish my sentence. Basically, you end up with this thing. And the thing is the justification that when a completely uninvolved group decides on behalf of you, you can be inherently created into a problem to be used as the villain of the internet. And your community, no matter how positive it is, not even if you discovered the cure to cancer, built the Tower of Babylon, talked directly to God, and God said, yeah, he's cool, that's my nigga, cap, no cap, they can decide that everything you do is always negative no matter what you've done. And the only thing that matters is how viral that first statement they make goes out, and what happens after they make the statement, and the many reactions that are had infinitesimally from that moment. For me, my filter has been what I said. I care about the opinion of people who are directly involved. Anything that is outside, it's not that I ignore them, it's just that I allow them to decide if they are going to be taken seriously or not. For other people, they might have a similar structure, where they put out content, but if they're not inside of their personal Discords, if they're not, for example, Patreon supporters, they don't have access to the to their publicly accessible but privately shibboleth server. So their filter becomes, I only listen to the people who pay me money, right? Maybe there are some that have a public-facing Discord, but they have then a close community group Discord that they have with people who they personally know. And therefore it then becomes, well, here's the one that I have for my audience, and then here's the one that I have with my personal friends and family. And that's how they filter for their audience. Maybe you have very large public-facing content creators that have all of these different connections, and then they have themselves a little bit of some pro Jared on the side. With some pro Jared sins. And all of a sudden, people are like, wait, where did this picture of pro Jared dressed up as Sailor Neptune come from? Or Sailor Uranus? Why are your legs open like that?
Oh no.
And it's something like that. whatever the particular technique you use is, it has to be something greater than the only thing we expect you to do is to be in the culture. Because anybody could watch the content and say they're in the culture, but I'll use an even better example. You can have a person who makes content. When they make takes, their takes are fine. Or their takes about a particular focused topic, solid. Well known, well documented, well researched. The second you ask them an opinion about some head ass shit, or anything that has nothing to do with a particularly tailored topic, every word they say is a dog shit take. And they're really bad with their personal actions with other people. And they're really disinvolved. And they just unironically yap back and forth with the people that they're involved in. To the point where groups behave towards them the way that the internet currently behaves towards my friend Devin against Short Fat Otaku. For there, that filter would be, well, who are the people who are just actively shitting on me who I can't have a back and forth conversation with? Period. And it's not just him that has this happen. There are many content creators, left, right, dead of center, and apolitical, that experience this. Because that's just how multi-blogging platforms have become now. Especially in the evidence of TikTok. This is more clear for, like, everyday people and, like, influencers that have come up because of short-form content creation than it is for mainstay platform figures, right? Not to say that you can't have people like Dev end up making bad audiences for themselves because of the reactions they have. We all witnessed this happen when I did my investigation and then the watch through the content of Leadhead. Because anybody who went through that, it's like, we didn't create bad information to talk to you about. The inspiration came from watching your content. And so you're telling your audience, you shouldn't listen to what other people are saying. They're just trying to get their yucks and yums. No! Some, maybe yes. But in general, me and my audience, no. I want to know what it is that makes you tick. I can't understand. I gotta ask you directly. But I'm not allowed to ask you directly? I should ignore what I saw? Don't believe the shit that you heard. Listen to the shit that I'm telling you now. Why can't I listen to the bullshit that I was hearing from the content? Because bad faith. Because evil people. Because Nazis. That can't always be the case. In fact, you could say that in many of these places, should you have a filter that's designed like that, or you have no filter, and then you're trying to remove the context of the information so that people on one platform, if they say something on something like Blue Sky, you should ignore Twitter chuds. The Twitter chuds are just bad faith. And in comes me with the ability to discuss the topic, have grace, and save space for you to have your reaction, and say, there's something other than just them being angry at them. You have to have a filter in that way, because otherwise, then you can never interact with people whatsoever. Because if they have a different interpretation than you, then that interpretation stops you from being able to engage with them, right? If you say that I'm a Nazi, for example, but none of my actions are what a Nazi would like. Last I checked, they don't like race mixers. How do you make this congruent with the reality that's in front of you? The only way that this works is to then remove the information from isolation. But that's censorship. If not, outright attempting to rewrite the narrative. People don't like it when you lie to them. So there needs to be some reason why these two things don't happen and why they're incongruent. Because this will affect those people more than it would affect us. But in the purpose of the thought experiment, the obvious answer is they're going to tell people you shouldn't listen to them, and everybody else is going to be like, fuck that bullshit, I want to hear about the fact of why you decided to have sex with your interpersonal friends, and then you became a family unit, and then you started trying to groom people into being transgender. I want to hear more about that, Leadhead. I want to hear more about that dumb shit, left-wing people, left-wing positions. Because whether or not they're doing it to yuck the yum, whether they think some type of way or not, the opportunity to, open the door, so to say, is on the person that it comes for, not that it comes from. So, for my policy, people who come through that revolving door can come and go in any period of time. But they are not going to be allowed to just say, I am a person who is known here, I have more experience than even the content creator himself, you should listen to what I say. they gonna get a swift kick in their ass from me. If I don't do it, Horror gonna do it. If Horror don't do it, Marcus gonna do it. If Marcus don't do it, Bully might do it. If Bully don't do it, Smokes might do it. And any other mods that we have from there. If they come in and they genuinely are curious, then we can tell them all the fuck they want to know about the crying game, right? And there's no problem. And if they then leave after getting the information, okay, good. Be blessed, beloved. And you can come back anytime you want. Just don't be a monster. Just don't make a fucking farce of yourself. Don't be aggressive. Don't be annoying. Be proper. Respect people. And never the twain shall meet. And you could have that policy across the entire internet. More or less, I think that's how most of us behave. As long as someone's not being an asshole and a monster, then it's fine. Unfortunately, that tends not to be the case. Because, and this is relevant because this happened literally on camera. In fact, I challenged a person, 2 people, technically. One of them apologized when the shit happened. The other one did not do so. And I am so hilarious to see that that person did not come through, despite how very aggressive and angry they were with their arguments while they did so. When I was playing Don't Starve Together earlier this week, before Game Fest started, I was in a public server for DST, and there was a user who was trying to defend other people who decided that they were going to decide what my attitude must have been. Because Lord knows that you can read tone through text, and you can definitely be able to understand what a person is trying to say, despite I actively told them what I said, and I actively gave them the opportunity to go to my live stream and have this conversation with me directly, and then invited them to defend their position live and here, and they did not do so. For what reason, I don't know why, but take your guesses, chat. And I said to them, no, it's not about me saying this, and it's not about me saying that. It's about you trying to be an asshole and being aggressive. And instead of simply being a leader and trying to take the path that would work for everyone, while talking through whatever you thought was a problem, you instead tried to elevate an issue to a problem where a person could then be dismissed. Because usually, the types of people who try to play games like DST are usually the people that come from that group on Tumblr, that love to make everything about themselves, and use other people as a shibboleth, and as a whipping boy, to justify the way that they behave the way that they do, because they will use them to say, and that's why I don't allow people on the outside, because then you get shitters like this. So they have an Anita Sarkeesian and a Alyssa Mercante way of behaving. And the thing that's important there is that those types that do that, they were always weird. Like, people will blame the drama and the nonsense bullshit and the arguments as being responsible for why something happens. They were weird before any of that shit ever was a problem, right? Like, for Anita Sarkeesian, on the issue of something like, what was her favorite show? Charmed! Before a thing even happened, which I believe in this case what caused this drama was that she hated the reboot series because it wasn't her original beloved baby franchise. She got fucking pissy ass mad about it. And everybody mocked her, saying, I'm sorry, that makes you a garbage human being. Because she said the same shit to Sargon, because Sargon chose to criticize her. Or, in the case of Alyssa Mercante right now, she's throwing a baby rage fit with her and her legal team attempting to put together an argument saying, we're trying to get legal precedent, we're trying to set laws, these chuds, these evil, toxic, racist gamers, they can't be allowed to use her to make their content. All they do is they do it to popularize us. Because they want to use people like Jeff Tarzia behind the YouTube account Smash JT as an example to say that everybody who's in content production, they're all grifters, they're all liars. But the reason why people are talking about the thing in question is because long before they got into that work, you made a fucking farce of yourself. So people are removing the problem by talking about the fact that there's a problem going on. And it's being caused by a person who wants no interest to discuss shit, because anytime you catch her doing something illegal and you get her on tape, she says, no, give me your phone, I need to delete that. And it's like, bitch, no the fuck you're not. It's my phone. Why don't you just stop doing the thing you're doing? No, you're gonna be canceled. And she goes through the internet trying to find justification to say, no, you'll be ignored. You're a bad person. No, this one's gonna be ignored. They posted Gamergate content. They spoke positively about Gamergate. And it's like, no, I didn't. Actually, at the same time, I'm making fun of you and him Why is it that you don't seem to want to support the times when I am for the things that you're for, but I do it in a way that I'm not 100% on your in lockstep with you, for the same reasons that a person from that person's perspective would try to control and curtail their audience, right? It's because I don't agree with them in lockstep. So I must be one of the bad ones because I'm not a foot soldier who's giving them toxic energy to continue doing what they're doing. So amongst her audience that she likes to have inside that hug box, her policy is any person she doesn't like doesn't get to watch. But really, the reason why is because if she allows anybody to watch, then anytime she does something stupid, we're able to record it, and then that ends up being bad for her, because here's evidence of you doing the thing that we are accusing you of doing, literally 10 seconds after you told us you weren't doing it.
This is the same old shit from basically almost 20 years ago. I remember, Thunderfoot, right?
Yep, Thunderfoot.
Back in those days, when people would misuse the DMCA system to get people off their backs with criticism, and he had that Venom Fang X was his name, had drama with him, and basically put his dick on the table and was like, all right, check. We're either going in front of court and you're losing, or you're doing a groveling apology. And basically this, I don't want to be criticized, so I'm gonna get my lawyer involved, is the same kind of shit.
Yeah.
It's the same thing, different decade, basically, but still YouTube.
Yeah, amongst all of them. It is, yes, I can see horror. I can see the timer on the screen. I know time's almost up. I need to take a shit too. So basically, it's the same problems of yesteryear affecting us today. But in this context, when it comes to like audiences and communities and crossover genres of just entertainment media, having different people pushing it in multiple directions, it becomes a hot pot of all of the issues that are supposed to be a part of the great... There is not a word that describes a group of international gamer, so I'm going to use the term as it applies to politics, of the great American melting pot of gaming, which we should technically call the great culture pot of gaming, where you can have people that can be involved and be uninvolved at the same time. And they're able to be involved without needing to be an expert on everything. They don't have to be a expert. They can just specifically have their one particular focus, and then they can still cross-pollinate with all other people. We live in a period now where, to answer his question, you have to have a grand filter. Because if you don't have a grand filter, then bad actors will always be involved at all times. And they will actively push you in the direction that benefits themselves, so that they can then use you as a springboard to increase their own virality, and then possibly even abandon or betray the people that were responsible for getting them up and going in the future. Because once they've gotten the platform, why do they even need you anymore? They can switch you out with a new audience. So then they kill it dead, or they poison it in some way where they salted the earth behind them, which is the same thing as pulling up the ladder. They salt and poison, they salt the field, they poison the well, and they destroy the crops so that you can't even exist there. The only thing that's left is that you have to leave, and what you end up leaving behind, not just is the culture, is also the memories that the culture had. And that is where gaming really exists, and that's where community really exists. We ran out of time to keep talking about this, but basically, all of this shit, it all crosses over with each other. Because in spirit of how I look at it, this affects everything, right? I can't be God, Emperor, Tyrant of the internet everywhere forever. That's not my focus, and that's definitely not what I want. But I do have to control for the shit that I'm responsible for in my own audience. So this is how I choose to control that grand filter. How other audiences choose to do this, I don't know. Shibboleths, routine, regular crowd control. Sky's the limit, honestly. But good talk.
Yeah, thanks for talking to me.
Yeah, it's no problem. Anytime. Give me a second, chat. I need to go to the bathroom. And I'll be right back. Because I'm pretty sure Horror wants to talk to me. Perhaps I was wrong, because she disappeared. She was just listening. I made a blind assumption. I'm sorry, Horror. Anyways. False alarm. I thought my body was about to do something really stupid. Anyways. Let's see here. Where are we at? We are at 2:51. The second Game Summerfest broadcast should be going out at some point now, I think. If not in the next 9 minutes. I should not have closed that tag. I'm dumb. Yes. So, the PC Gaming Show is going to go live at 3 p.m. We're just 8 minutes out from it. So, we're going to go live with that. And then I'm going to cover the Death Stranding 2 game premiere at another time. And then we're going to do probably Monday and Tuesday as catch-up days for Day 2's content, as well as the Xbox reveals from their showcase and the Outer Worlds 2 live direct they probably did immediately after that. Because I was not up to do this at a time where I would have caught it proper while live, because I'm pretty sure I streamed through it. That's okay. So, if anybody has some final things they want to talk about or say, now would be the time to tell me before I stop the broadcast. Anyone? Anyone at all? Also, hello, Alex. Might just be listening. Okay, by the looks of it and sounds of it, that is not the case, unless it is. Hello, Alex.
Hello.
Did you have something specific you wanted to bring up before we went off air?
Honestly, I just had it in my head, but I just forgot it.
Whippersnappers. Don't you hate when that happens?
Dang it. It was at the top of my. It was in my head, and then I got distracted for like 5 seconds.
How it happens. I'll write that shit down.
Yeah.
Here's what it is. Don't forget.
I can't freaking remember. Damn it.
It's okay. Same for next time.
Next time, definitely.
Okay, no problem. No problem.
Mm-hmm.
Will I cover the body cam footage of Nick Rekieta? Maybe. I know they tried. I know they put through the thing to try and hide it. However, I also know that the energy of people who are choosing to get on top of that are doing it because they want to keep Nick in the news so they can make fun of and embarrass him. And for that interest, I don't know if I want to. It's feeling like a no, but we'll see. If we can get access on the undoctored information, perhaps in the interest of showing whether or not Nick Rekieta has learned. But I personally think it's a no. Because it's the same energy behind people who originally wanted to talk about Nick Rekieta. They weren't doing it in the interest of covering his news story, they were doing it in the interest of making fun of him for being a cuckold. And that I do not fuck with. So I probably wouldn't do it. Simply because I didn't cover anything else that he did. And the reason why I didn't, for myself, was because it'd be putting the kids at harm and putting the family at harm. He's been tried. His case is over. He has to serve a year in jail. Let him go, serve his time, and give him the chance to be clean. Because really, we're putting him in a position where he's always going to defend this because there are people who are going there to make him into the drama. Because they want to keep him as a lol cow. Not what I'm there for. So, more than likely not, but we'll see. If I do anything involving it, it will not be content that goes on my channel. I'll be looking at it in-house. Alright. 4 minutes. So let me get the thumbnail cracked out, and let's start up that live stream, shall we? Bye, everybody! We go see you next Sunday. Same Carl time, same Carl channel. Goodbye.